Because you got powerful legs. How did you get the physique? Was it gym or how did you get the physique?
I've always been.
She's actually not got powerful legs. Do you shower in your dressing room? Do you have a shower on the day of a fight or not? Tell us about the tattoos.
Shut the fuck up, you little prick.
But then I've got the Phoenix.
Hey, prick.
So I'll take it from Bob every day of the week.
Absolute disgrace.
I'm sure no one will mind.
Move him out of here, Darren.
Ricky Hatton didn't go over for his fighter because he risked getting abducted and sold into sexual
I never said that.
Both have been rape victims. I'm not watching Frank Buglioni live on Saturday night. You're out of your mind.
Jesus Christ, get yourself a life.
He's actually a priest.
Yeah.
It's because his brother John Fury eye gouged him.
What have I told you all this time? He's going to end up sucked out, fucked out, looking for a handout.
Boxing nutters messenger group. I'm gonna be the king.
J-Pump, you know what I'm saying?
Welcome, everybody, to the 595th edition of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse, a proud member of the Sports Social Network. You can catch us 8 o'clock in the UK every Sunday, noon Pacific time in the United States. You can also catch us on patreon.com /backslash Boxing Asylum, where you can find Steve Wellings, a little bit of extra content from him, and that's your gateway to the Boxing Nutters Messenger group, where all the wonderful things happen. What wonderful things? You're going to have to join to find out. But I promise you it's not nudes of me. There would only be me in the group if that was the case. So anyhow, joining me today, Des and Justin, happy to have them today. It was a heck of a big day for boxing yesterday. Maybe not in the quality of the fights, but in some of the names involved. Also Friday as well. Just a big weekend is probably the better way to describe it. I think we're going to kick off the show with, I'll tell you what, let's actually kick it off with Keyshawn Davis. And just destroying a 6-pound overweight Gustavo Lemos on Friday night, knocking him down 3 times, absolutely obliterating the larger man, showing some stuff that he has not yet shown us. This was a big statement victory from Keyshawn Davis. All the talent in the world he has. Des, I think this was the night where it finally seemed to click.
Yes, it did. Before we talk about the brilliance of Keyshawn, Matty, can I just say a big congratulations to a huge friend of the pod, Billy Macy, who was boxing in the national quarterfinals tonight, and he stopped his kid, and now Billy's on to the national semis, so he's 2 fights away from another national title. So that's a big shout out to Billy Macy. Who
no joke when you're stopping guys in the amateurs either. That's not easy.
Not easy, and he in a couple of weeks he's going to come on and talk to us about his journey and the titles he's won. But congratulations, Benny. We're all really proud of you. Keyshawn was brilliant. Was it Friday night or Thursday night, Matty? I've lost
that was Friday night. The Canadian
Friday night. Correct. Yeah. So, we was looking for a statement win from Keyshawn, and it was laid on for him, and he was against a good kid in Lemos. And I always thought that Lemos is, I thought Lemos beat Hitchens, and I thought Lemos would have gone into this, it was going into this as 28-0, and he can punch as well, Lemos. So, look, down at lightweight is hugely talented. It's a massive talent pool down there, and we've spoke about it a lot last week. The Schofields, the Cruisers, the Abdullah Mathens, and they're and they're the undergroup because you've got the Zapidas and the Shakurs and the Tanks. In there is Frank Martin and who's the Ukrainian world champion at the moment? I always pronounce his name wrong, Matty.
Dennis Brenchik.
Dennis Brenchik's in there. You know, this is one of boxing's premier divisions, and it's talent packed. So they're matching these young fighters very tough, and it's almost like who can hold pole position. I said last week, I think Keyshawn's in pole. I think he's a huge talent. I think he'd make a statement win against Lemos. I think Lemos would come looking for Keyshawn, and I think that would be his undoing. I was really impressed with Davis. I think he had so much spite, so much snap. His feet were brilliant. His feet and his hands were in sync. It was probably his best win of his career. He exhibited all his talent against a very good opponent in Lemos. When I say very good, I mean he's being matched hard. So the type of guy you'd expect Keyshawn to box now, Lemos is definitely hitting that quota.
It's a heck of a level judge because, in all
Correct.
honesty, Lemos is the one who should be fighting Liam Perro next month. Not Richardson Hitchens. This is a guy qualified to be a 140-pound title challenger. So that's a great level show.
I'm glad you said that, and that's exactly right. So the fact that Keyshawn, at 11-0, has come in and fought a Lemos and stopped him so emphatically. I said last week on the pod, Keyshawn's my pick of that group, the group of Schofield, Cruz, Abdullah. He's my pick of that group. Now you've seen the fight, what do you think? Do you think he might be the guy, the next one to come through at lightweight, or do you still fancy a Cruz or a Mason ahead of him, Andy? Matty?
I think this is one of those situations, honestly, without getting too far away from the fight, where if these fighters are allowed to face each other, that probably like some round robin style, nobody's going to walk away with their O intact because styles fights. The one guy who keeps me from saying that, Keyshawn might be the number one contender in the division is I still think that William Zepeda might end up being one of the better pressure fighters of his generation. With the way that he throws left hands over the top of southpaws, he's going to be dangerous for a lot of these southpaw killers, honestly.
Who would you fancy out of Keyshawn and Frank Martin? They'd box next.
Davis, easy.
I would.
All right.
I would. So that kind of tells us now who would you fancy if Keyshawn was to box Navarrete?
Davis.
Yeah, I would because of the weight and the style. So we're now putting Keyshawn just behind the Zapidas, the Stevensons, and the Tanks, aren't we?
Yeah, I think he's a guy on the way up. Like, we know that Davis and Shakur are the goods, and then I think we're kind of wondering if Zepeda, Keyshawn Davis, Abdullah Mason, and I know there's others in there that I'm probably missing just off the top of my head, but those guys are kind of knocking at the door too. But there's so many capable fighters, 135 and 140 pounds. I mean, it's just I don't know where the talent stacks up. And again, I think it's one of those things where styles make fights, and a lot of these guys on any given night could take an L.
I agree, and they're like thoroughbred racehorses now in the middle of a race, and they're just nosing in front. So we'll talk about Abdullah Mason against Vasquez in the show, I'm sure. But when you look at the way Vasquez got to Abdullah and the way Keyshawn dealt with Lemos, that's the type of result it all goes for you. So Keyshawn, in my opinion, although we know how good Abdullah is, Keyshawn's just nudged ahead of that little pack, and he's just knocking on the door now of the Shakurs and the Tanks and the Zapidas, and I mean Lomachenko's in that group as well. But like you say, we saw Schofield last week, we saw Abdullah and Keyshawn this week. It's a really interesting cluster of very talented fighters down there at 145.
Well, and also Raymond Murataya there, and that's
Murataya's in that group as well. Yeah.
Murataya, that fight with Tevin Farmer definitely gave us some questions. And Justin, I mean, this being a great performance by Davis, but honestly, if I'm top ranked, I mean, I can't keep all these guys going at once towards the same titles. They got to eliminate each other at some point. I think Davis against Murataya is a real decent fight to figure out who really deserves the push.
Yeah, I think Davis would. He wouldn't knock out Murataya, but he would. I want to say a 116, 112 type. Murataya is good, but you got to look at it this way. Davis is way better than Farmer is at this point. And I think, yeah, Davis would win that. But you're right. It's eventually something's got to give. Somebody's got to lose. Somebody's got to move on. You can't push everybody. And like you said, there's only like a couple of titles. Because it seems like now that each TV or each promoter has their own route to each separate title. So it's not like all four are going to be available. So, yeah, you got to just get rid of them. I don't think they're going to do Mason versus Davis. I don't think they're going to do that right now. But I could definitely see, like you said, Murataya getting thrown out there and say, hey, somebody's got to lose, somebody's got to go. And I think I could no way Mason goes yet, but definitely Murataya. I can see that, definitely.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember if this was an eliminator for Dennis Baranchek's title or not. I'm trying to think here. Let's look at the WBO rankings.
Because that's the question though. Is Davis ready for Baranchek? That's a different level than he's ever seen.
I wouldn't take that just yet, Justin.
I know I would not throw him in there right now because Lemos is a decent level guy, but he's nowhere near that level. So it's like if you put him in versus Baranchek, you really must see something. Or you know what? I don't mind either. I don't make no money off of Keyshawn Davis. I like watching fight. So if it was up to me, sling him in there. Just let him go for it. But if you're smart, you would not do that now.
No, I think the route they'll take. I agree, Matt. Justin. I think the route they'll take Keyshawn. That was a statement win on Friday, and we said it on the pod last week. If he goes and stops Lemos, it will be a statement win. But I think it was even more emphatic than we imagined. You know, he really jumped on him, and he really let his hands go, and he had so much snap, and he had so much variation in such a short space of time. I think Top Rank will revisit an old friend, and I think we're going to see Keyshawn against Kambosos, and I think that would be a really good gauge for how. I think we know Keyshawn probably beats Kambosos, but it's how he beats him that will define how good Top Rank think he is and how they're going to push him. And I think Andy Cruz will be the one that sits back because he's only had the 4 fights and he's got a bit of learning to do yet, although he's a huge talent. And I think we're going to see Murataya, Mason, Keyshawn get pushed up the front. And I think the Kamboses and the Frank Martins, I think they're the ones that are going to be the fodder for them guys. And eventually we're going to see the outstanding fighters like the Zapidas and the Shakurs and the Tanks, if they're still around and still prepared. I think that little group of Keyshawn, Abdullah, and Murataya, if he can come through it, I think they're the one knocking on the door next. But I think they're going to be fed. Sorry, Matt. I think they're going to be fed the likes of a Frank Martin and possibly a Navarrete and a Kambosos before they get there.
Well, the current WBO rankings, obviously Baranchek the champion. 1 is Zepeda, then 2 Murataya, 3 Keyshawn Davis, 4 Sam Noakes. So yeah, it'll be it's all a matter of, Zepeda, I think, is ranked high with a bunch of organizations. So it's all a matter of who he finally gets his shot with. He's obviously got that fight with Farmer coming up here. And I think he's going to do far better than Murataya did against Farmer. But it's a very interesting division, but there's only so many titles to go around. And there's a whole bunch of people who don't want to work with each other, who are in charge of it all. But Davis just I think honestly, and I say this as a pot smoker, I think him getting nailed for getting high and failing that test and him not smoking pot now might be a better for him because he's looked a shit ton better in these last 2 fights. He stopped Pedraza, then he knocked Lemos around. So, maybe there's something to that. So good on Keyshawn Davis for kicking the devil's lettuce and getting his career back on track. But anyhow, So, but also on that card, I didn't watch. I didn't watch a whole lot of this card. I watched what I could on this one. But see, did you see the Troy Isley fight on there, Justin? Are you on mute? Did you go away?
Are you talking to me?
There you go. Yeah, did you
Or
see
Diz?
did you see the Troy Isley fight?
Yeah, I saw it.
Against Tyler Howard. That was this guy. I just kind of blasted through it because I read that he won by decision, as he has been pretty much doing in the latter part of his career. Let's see here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of his last 8 wins have gone to decision. But he's just kind of gone under the radar when it came to that a whole bunch of Olympic prospects top ranked sign, and here he's knocking on the door of a title opportunity at this point. How are you feeling? After watching this fight, I mean, he's boring, but he's skilled, and I wouldn't be shocked if he wins the title. The middleweight division is no great shakes right now.
Well, you got the boring part right. He's one of these guys. He doesn't do anything great, but he does everything pretty good. And last night was just boring. The guy, I mean, it was one of those deals you kept thinking to yourself, if you would just pick up the pace a little bit, you're going to get this guy out. You don't even have to go full speed, just pick it up a little bit. But he's like the American B-ball, I guess the best way to put it, because he's just not going to really get out of his spot. He's got his pace, he's got his rhythm, and that's fine. That's fine. He might sneak a world title because, like you said, middleweight's trash. It's just so bad. I don't see it unless they could put him in the perfect spot. But I mean, you know how these promoters are. I guess you could always weave him into something good, but I don't see it. He kind of is what he is. I think that's why you said the Olympians you haven't heard of, because he doesn't get anybody out of their seat. He doesn't have a big punch. He's just, like I said, he's pretty good. And pretty good doesn't make you a lot of money, get your name headlining. So I'll watch him, but I have if I have something else to do, then I'm not going to watch him much.
Yeah, he's ranked at 10. I was with the WBO rankings already while I was there, and he's ranked 10 in the WBO. Obviously, I think the negotiations are between Shiraz and Alam Hanallah on that one already. So I don't know. We'll see where he ends up. He's just not a guy who really who seems to ignite, but he does just enough. I mean, he's quality. I get the feeling that he's just a little bit better than Terrell Gaucher, which is probably good enough to win a title in this really barren middleweight division. It's just, I don't know. There's a lot of, there's paths to the title that are very easy for a guy like this potentially, who can just spoil it out and win a 12-round decision, probably no problem.
Well, I say this: you never want to be called the poor man's Terrell Gaucher, Gaucher's decent, but that's a tough comparison.
I think he might. I think he might be a little bit better than Gaucher. Yeah, I think he might be a little better.
Gaucher is what he is. He shows up, but man, he's another tough guy. He's another hard one to watch.
Yeah, he's a guy who does just enough either to win or lose whatever side he ends up on. But he's a talented fighter, just not in the kind of way that lights people up. But a fight that does light people up. How about a 2-round fight that included 4 knockdowns? I think that's entertaining. That people get all into that kind of stuff. Well, here we are with Abdullah Mason hitting the deck for the first 2 times in his career, both in round 1. And then his opponent, Johan Vasquez, he went down once in the first and then last time in the second, taking a tough solar plexus shot that ended it all. But this was really fun while it lasted. The first round, good chance that this is a round of the year candidate. I think Ames has joined us. He lied to me. He said he didn't think he was going to be able to make it. He undersells and over delivers. Did you see this fight? Are you going to be able to over deliver on commentary, Ames?
No, I only saw one clip of this fight, mate. I'll jump in.
No worries.
Point here.
No worries.
Yeah, I didn't see this one.
But so Des, this fight, it's not like Mason got caught with shots that like you should never be getting caught with. That second knockdown, that left hook, he squeezed right in front of the glove and caught him on the very point of Mason's chin. It was a sharp punch. But Mason recovered well, and each time he got dropped, he went back in there to fight. Tough guy, and he is skilled, but I don't think hiding glass is the right way to say it, because we've seen him touch down, but vulnerable to say the least.
We want a lot of things from our boxers by the time they get there. So, okay, let's be a bit forensic about this. So, we know Abdullah Mason turned over very young. So, you could argue that he's not got his man strength yet, and he's going to develop on the job. He's had 16-0, 14 by KO. We probably want to see Mason turn a fight around. We want to see him lose rounds. We want to maybe see him get off the floor. But that'd probably be one that they want to forget, or they'll be working on never to let that happen again, because Abdullah started really well, but then he got a bit greedy, and he was just trying to overcook his work. And in doing that, he stood in front of a puncher, an experienced puncher in Vasquez. So he learned a lot from that. And look, the pluses are you got up, you put your punches together well, you got rid of a strong, tough, seasoned fighter that's got a reasonable amount of pedigree. Like we say, they're matching these kids at 135 tough, because they're jostling for position in that group. But I think with when you consider his age, when you consider, he's having to develop, going from a mid-teenager to an early 20s fighter in the pros, I don't think you want to see Mason take too many punches like that, and you won't want to see him be put down too often. Although there was a lot of positives from it. It was a real fun, just under 2 rounds. Mason done an awful lot of things right. But yeah, it'll be one they'll probably drill into him that we don't want to see you win fights like that again. And ironically, it was an exciting fight. But if Mason had slowed it down a little bit, it'd have probably got Vasquez out of there in 4 or 5. But that wouldn't have been as exciting. And I know what it's like. He got greedy. He touched Vasquez early, and Vasquez felt Mason's power, and that's what made Abdullah get greedy. But I think he's got to just work on that game management. He's got to work on. You're not all going to go just because I touch them. They're not all going to go just because I drop them, and he's got to work on that now. But if they boxed again, that fight probably goes 4 or 5 rounds, and Vasquez don't land the glove on Abdullah. And that's what he's got to work to improve. Really fun fight, not knocking it. We've learned a little bit about Abdullah, because we know he can get off the floor. We know he can be a good kid in Vasquez who can punch, but they'd probably want to tweak that so it goes a little bit longer, and Abdullah don't get touched quite as often.
Yeah, and it's it's good to come out of that fight the first time you touch down with a W. It's a learning experience, and you take it as you can. And he didn't seem bothered. That's the thing. He got touched, and he hit the canvas.
Yeah,
he handed the refs his gloves, and onward he marched. That's
what.
Go ahead.
What I would say there, Matty. Sorry to interrupt you. What I would say is we're judging Mason at a very high bar now, because he's in a group with Schofield, Cruz, and Keyshawn, and we're looking for little chinks now. We're looking for little moments in time now. There would have been a lot of people in the chat that thought Abdullah might have been in front of Keyshawn last week, but now that's gone the other way now. Keyshawn put in a brilliant performance. We've seen Mason get touched a bit, and now that might have reversed. So because he's in such a competitive group, such a talented group, we're looking for moments in fights that allow us to think the other kids got the edge. And I think this weekend might have shown us that Keyshawn's just got his nose in front of this group. But on another night, Abdullah could have had that, So I go back to what I said. We love to see fighters turn fights around, and we love to see fighters walk through fire. But I think that was a little bit. I don't think the people behind Abdullah Mason would have been pleased about that. They're glad he got off the floor. They're glad he got rid of him inside two. But it could have been a little bit. It could have been a little bit better. Maybe stretch it out a little bit over 3 or 4 or 5 rounds, and not have the and not sort of walk so close, not fly so close to the sun as what Abdullah did.
And Justin, do you before this fight, Abdullah Mason, there was certainly talk that he might be prospect of the year on many people's lists. But do you think this foray into being a candidate for round of the year has taken him out of the running for prospect of the year?
No, I wouldn't say it took you out of the running. I mean, it just gets your name out there more. I don't think it does it help. I think Dez summed it up perfectly. Does this fight, it kind of hurts him and it helps him, but I mean, you just want to move past this and kind of pretend it didn't happen. But no, I don't think it hurts you for prospect of the year, but it doesn't help you either. It just, I don't know. It's one of those deals. He, like Des said, he went a little too wide open. He thought he could blast out this guy quickly. He didn't. He kind of, I think he might have overestimated this guy really could punch. And he just kind of opened up too early, too quick, and got caught. It happens. And it's going to happen. And if it's going to happen, you might as well have it happen now instead of versus like the top guy who can really bang. So, I mean, just get it over. Like I said, I can't add much more. Des just summed it up perfectly. Get it over with. It's done. Just go watch the tape, figure out, learn from it and move on, because this just happens. It's boxing. You're going to get hit.
That left hook was super sneaky.
Yeah,
that he got caught with. It was just a sneaky shot.
But my favorite punch though was when Mason hit him with that uppercut. It's sort of like he went in slow mo. The guy did. Like, it was just a really cool. I can't explain it. It's just a really cool shot, because when he hit him, the guy just like not floated, but you know what I'm trying to say. It was like a slow mo. Yeah. The guy went down. That was cool. That was a good shot. The guy was like just kind of floated, then went down. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, there was definitely some good shots this weekend. I don't know if there was a knockout of the year candidate that we saw this weekend, but there was some really good clean shots on there. Let's see. I think there might have been one other fight on this top ranked card that I kind of saw a little bit of the other Davis brothers, Kelvin and Keon. It kind of sounds like some Dave Chappelle bit, but anyway. They both got through their fights with decision victories. Keon was in his debut. Kelvin in his 14th contest there. Interestingly enough, we have Keyshawn competing at 135, Kelvin at 140, and it looks like Keon at 147. So they're in 3 separate divisions, throwing down with the Davis name. And it's tough to tell where these guys will go. I mean, they're both quality enough fighters. It's early in their career, but let's see, who do we got in here? And it's hard to see where they're going within their careers. But
my hopes are high for Kelvin. I've seen him on Pro Box.
Yeah.
He's the Pro Box guy, and there's something not there. I mean, maybe it's just me, but there's something that you could just see that he's got ability. He does the basics, but it's just not there. I can't explain it. It's just not there.
Yeah, and God, if you have 2 out of 3, I mean, that's not bad at all. That's pretty good. If you have one decent brother out of a mix, I mean, look at the Ennises. I think there was 3 failures before him, and we'll get to him in a moment. But yeah, there's some quality in the Davis family with boxing, and it's nice to see what they're doing. We also saw it with there's umpteen freaking Russell brothers out there boxing too. But yeah, Bob Arum has signed. I believe every Davis brother that there is, and here they go with their careers. Also, Robert Merriweather III taking a decision there against Eric Howard. Merriweather, a very talented guy, but I don't know if he has the pop to stay in it. We'll see how that might go for him. But I feel like it's just one of those guys where he's not going to be able to keep folks off in a smaller ring on a bad day. But we'll find out all in all. Let's see here. Danny has joined us too. Which Danny has joined us?
How you doing, Matty? Friend of Eamon's, so it's probably not the best character reference to get me started. But glad to be on. I watched most of the Top Rank show, to be fair. I know you boys have covered it in pretty good detail so far, but obviously Keyshawn.
Give me your synopsis. Yeah, give me your synopsis.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Keyshawn, and I have to admit I had my doubts on him going into this fight. I mean, I personally didn't take too much from the Pedraza win, given the version of Jose Pedraza that was in there with him, well past his best, dragged down to a weight he really shouldn't have been making anymore. But whilst in the same breath, it probably wasn't the best version of Gustavo Lemos to put him away like he did. I mean, the power's clearly starting to come for Keyshawn. I think stylistically, a fighter like Lemos, who was throwing in hooks from the back of the hall, was always going to leave openings, but he capitalized on them, put it away well. Troy Isley, I don't even know, do we really want to talk about this again?
We avoided it as best we could earlier.
Oh, absolutely dreadful. I'll just say, I think it's the only time I've ever found myself agreeing with Rick Glazier, because I saw him tweet he fights like a knockout artist, and he couldn't break an egg. And yeah, I think the less said about that, the better. The Abdullah Mason fight had me up out of my seat. I mean, genuinely one of the best first rounds, the most entertaining first rounds I've ever seen. I think I agree with you, Matt. I wouldn't be too concerned if I was in the Abdullah Mason business. I mean, he's a young kid who got a bit overeager and got clipped with some big shots. It happens. I don't think like he's necessarily as chinny as some people in social media were remarking. I think he didn't seem to be too badly hurt, and for too long. I thought he recovered quite quickly. And then we're talking about Kelvin Davis. Was that right?
Yeah, both Kelvin and Keon were on the card.
Didn't see Keon, actually, the kid making his debut. Saw Kelvin. Not particularly impressed. I mean, he dominated the fight for the most part. Struggled a bit, I think, in the second last round when Serrano, managed to close that gap and get a bit closer. He didn't really look like he knew what to do in the inside. And Serrano was having a good 10th, obviously, before he sort of got dropped. So there's clearly some power there, but I think you'd be a brave man to back him reaching sort of world title level at this stage. But it was a really enjoyable night of boxing, to be fair. It got me through my Friday night all right.
Yeah, 3 nights in a row or 3 mornings in a row, depending on your time zone and what you're doing there. So it was not the greatest weekend for boxing, but they had some good names out, a few decent fights in there, an upset here and there, a few decent knockouts. But as impressive as it was watching Davis develop, and what a performance by Keyshawn Davis it was. I mean, 2 rounds, that was huge. On the other side of the coin in Philadelphia on Saturday, what we ran into, unfortunately, for Mr. Jaron Ennis was a very disappointing was a very disappointing performance for him. He went 12 rounds with Chukhadzhian again. And admittedly, this was a much different fight than the first one. Chukhadzhian was punching back a little bit more, and he definitely landed some good shots. In fact, I gave him a number of rounds. The scorecards at the end of this fight I only thought one of these scorecards really told the story. Steve Weisfeld had 116-110. I thought that was close to what was going on. Eric Merlinski 117-109. Dave Braslow 119-107. Only giving Chukhadzhian a single round. There was a point deduction and a knockdown after a succession of blows by Boots in the 5th, where Chukhadzhian took a wise knee and was able to kind of stop the damage. But I thought he won the last 2 for sure, 1 or 2 early on, a middle one. I thought that 114, 112, 115, 111 wasn't out of bounds on this one, Des. I think that 119, 107 was definitely not a respectable scorecard, in my opinion. And I think that Boots apparently has only gotten worse, or Sarkeesian has gotten far better.
Oh, well, I think Chukhadzhian implemented different tactics this time around. The first fight, we saw a very reactive Chukhadzhian, and he was sort of I think he might have been intimidated by the task in front of him. But he'd shared 12 rounds with Boots, and he knew him a lot better. And for this one, they clearly, their directive was to stay with Boots and punch with him. And that's what he did for a large part of this fight. And that's why you went for the 116, 110 scorecard, because I think Karen was in pretty much every round, although I think he lost most of them, but he was in them. I think we've got to contextualize this fight, though, because it was Boots coming out. It was him coming home. It was the IBF world champion. It was the number one guy at 147. He was headlining a card that was pretty much about welcome home, Boots. Let's show everybody how good you are. And I think Karen Chukhadzhian just kind of spoiled the party a little bit because he was so stubborn. He was a bit dogged, and he implemented different tactics to what he did the first time round. I think maybe Boots didn't do himself any favour because he touched him in round 3 and he dropped him in round 5, and I think that made Boots a bit greedy. And sometimes, this happens in a lot of sports. A fighter like Ennis, he goes in there and thinks, right, after 3 rounds, I just can't get the pattern I need, and I just can't get the rhythm that I want. And it's not being helped by my opponent, who's really stubborn and not playing ball with me.
Or his dad, who can only tell him get the knockout, not how to get it.
We'll come to that. Yeah, that was peculiar, but we'll come to that. But I think from a fighter's perspective, and I've seen this a lot of times, you get to around 3 or 4, and I think in Boots' case last night, I think he realised it ain't going to be punch perfect tonight. But what I am going to do, I'm going to win the rounds this way. And that's what he decided to do. Now, we've seen Beterbiev do that. I've seen him do it against Anthony Yard, and I see Alexander Usyk do it against Chisora. Sometimes, I can't be punch perfect. I can't be the type of fighter everybody expects me to be tonight, but I'm still going to win this fight. I'm going to win the rounds. And even if I do it this way, I'm still winning. And I think Boots got to about round 4 or 5 and thought, definitely round 6, I'm just going to keep grinding this one out now. I'm winning the rounds. I'm the better fighter of the 2, and this gets me the win. And we've got to just draw a line under it. And that happens a lot in sport. And sometimes styles, clashes, rhythms, patterns of a fight. I think everyone's been a bit hard on Boots because we want to see this standalone performance against this big name. And I think if we're talking about a Madrimov or a Crawford or an Ortiz, I think you'll get that version of Boots. But I think sometimes the stars can align against you. And last night, with him being in Philadelphia, with him touching Chukhadzhian early, with him dropping him in the 5th, with his dad's instructions, I think it all got to him a little bit. And perhaps now he's got that out of the way, we'll see a better version of Boots next time round. But I wasn't overly disappointed with the performance. I kind of understood it a little bit. But look, I thought Boots did what he had to do, but I have to say that I like Chukhadzhian's tactics. I like the fact that he was prepared to punch with Boots. I like the fact that he weren't going away. I like the fact that he was more proactive than reactive. Certainly a lot more than the first fight. Look, get that one out of the way, draw a line under it, and move on. Boots is still a world champion. He's still the best guy at 147, and let's see what the next one holds.
Yeah, but Ames. Something that was said by Boots, he said, unless one of the other champions wants it and we can get a fight to be made, he's moving to 154 pounds. He seemed to be trying to hint at the weight being the reason he couldn't get him out of there, feeling like he didn't have snap on his punches. I don't know. I'm not in his body. I can't make this an excuse for him or say if it's an excuse or a fact. But it does look like he's going to be joining 154 pounds and stacking even further a great division and leaving a hole at welterweight in probably one of the weakest welterweight divisions that we've seen in some time.
Yeah, hello everyone. Good to be back on the Asylum, and great to hear Danny as well making his Asylum debut. If only you'd read your messages, Matty, you'd be able to have a crack at his last name. I'm sure that would be a little bit of bit of fun before he jumped on. But nevertheless,
oh shit! Hold on. Let me reach for my phone and find this out. I'm worried here. Is it Eastern European? Is that what you're
it
doing
is,
to me?
yeah.
Oh
it is.
dear. Yeah, this could only go badly. Let's see here. Gilflane?
Got it in one. Brilliant.
All right. Yeah. All right. Wish I had a drink near me. I'd celebrate with an ice cold Budweiser or something. I don't know.
A toast to you, Matty. And not quite a vintage victory for Jaron Ennis, but in terms of him plotting out his future off of the back of that victory over Chukhadzhian for the second time round, I don't know where his future lies, because he didn't really seem all that sure himself. To be honest with you, he sort of kind of played both fields, and I guess unless the titles don't present themselves at welterweight, he will move up to super welter. But it sort of seemed like that conversation post fight was sort of led by him trying to search for a reason as to why he didn't look better, or he didn't stop Chukhadzhian, as was being banded about as this being another fight where he can kind of break out and get a real big performance under his belt here. So I don't actually know how much stock to put into whether the weight was really an issue or not. I think the fights and getting up for fights are an issue for Jaron Boots Ennis. And I think as well, too, the ceiling that Jaron Boots Ennis might get to isn't as high as maybe once thought it was, because he seems to be a lot more open. He seems to be a lot less defensively sound. He seems to have a bit of a gap in communication of instructions, or finding the right way to present instructions from his corner to himself, and spotting those points and then executing those in the ring. And that's going to be a problem when it comes to those bigger fights. Whilst I'm not making an easy point to say change your trainer or change your setup or whatever it is, it just kind of comes when you get to the higher levels that you need those little bits of edges, and you can't just rely on what got you there to the dance in the first place. And I think he's been a little bit not quite found out, but just slowing down a little bit here. The shine off of Boots is rubbing off a little bit. I think really here for Boots, unless it's anything big, unless it's a world title, unless it's a big fight, we won't really see that elevated level. We won't really see that higher level of Boots that we've been heard about and talked about. And when it comes to that jumping up to super welterweight, there are good fighters there. Super welter, real good, talented fighters. Which it'd be hard. It's a hard fought route to a world title there. When you're talking about Terence Crawford, Crawford's in a league of his own there. So let's not talk about Crawford and Boots right now. Virgil Ortiz, that's a good fight. That's a real good fight between the two of them, and either man on their day
would be a good fight if he beats Fundora.
Well, I wouldn't back Spence to beat Fundora. I think Fundora's. I'm backing Fundora. In that
fight. And I think that has more to do with a lot of question marks over Spence and his year and a half off now, etc. Right?
That's exactly it, Matt. Hit the nail on the head there. But then you think about Fundora and then Boots, where that's a big man in there who knows who he is as a fighter, and can pack a punch, take a dig, and give it back. And then you got Murtazalia, who's a complex fighter in himself. It's not easy for Boots at super welterweight. So maybe
if the promoters would get together, I mean, we have it set up to have some great fights up there. It's just stacked with talent. Like we were just discussing 135. I think 154 it might be just as loaded with great fighters and great potential.
No, I agree, and there are a couple of holding pattern fights for him there as well too. They'll still be quite tough. Like Lubin, I think might be a good holding pattern fight before he kind of maybe assesses the land and see how he's like at a super welter. But even then, when you're still at that top level and you're trying to come out for an eliminator or anything like that, you're still in real tough fights. So I don't know. I kind of want to see him at super welterweight before I start kind of thinking it's a tough. I already do think that, but before maybe like not as far as writing off his chances, but it is just really difficult hit for him. I think when he gets up there off of the back of what should have been a real big night for him, what should have been a night where Eddie Hearn would really kind of be shouting out with the microphone, not a microphone, sorry, whatever they call, I can't remember what they're called, but really just shouting off the top of the roof for Boots Ennis.
And it's not that he's not a very talented fighter. I just don't think he's as good as people are. And Justin, his performance is disappointing. You mentioned his body language wasn't great. He just didn't seem to deal with the holding. Harvey Dot kind of dealt with it himself, taking the point away when it got a bit excessive. But when you think about it, like, what is Ennis's best victory to date at this point in time, even considering how highly people have been rating him?
That's a good question. God, let me think.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull that up right. I'm pulling up his box rec right now because
but what I'm saying about his body language was it's just, I hate to use the word he bitched, but he did. He just kind of bitched the whole second half of the fight because it wasn't going his way. And then he just, for me, it's the shots he took. He took way too many clean shots from a guy that should be beneath him. And like you said, he just, I don't know. I don't think the corner, I know Ames didn't want to say it, but he might want to look at that because that just, I don't think that's working. They didn't tell him anything that helped.
No, I don't think they gave him any advice that was very handy other than just, like, oh, we expect you to do this, give him confidence. I guess looking at this, the best victory, I'm going to make an argument that the best win on his record is Sergey Lipinets.
I'm looking at it again now. God, Ames could be right on that. If you think about it, I mean, we've all given Boots this coronation as the next guy.
He's
the guy behind Crawford.
He's going to beat Crawford.
But if you think about it, he hasn't looked great in a while. I mean, it's like you're right. Lipinets probably is his best fight. I mean, look at what Chris Van Heerden. I mean, if you go down the line, these aren't killers. And he's going to say, if you talk to Ennis and everybody, what's he going to say? Well, they don't want to fight me. I don't get the chances. But could he? I mean, we don't know if he could beat one of the top guys. More, if you look at it now, and this is not taking anything away from Karen, but you should be knocking Karen out. I mean, you should. If you are what people said you are, you don't go 24 rounds with Karen. You just don't do it. You don't do it.
You should
Crawford
not Karen out in the not Karen out in the grocery store. You should not Karen out in the local park, and you should not Karen out in the ring.
You should take care of business. So I'm not going to be one of these people that say, "Oh, Boots is overrated," but we are very close to crossing that line of, is he overrated? Now he has to prove it, and knowing him and how Eddie Hearn does it, we're probably going to see Karen 3.
Yeah, I think that's highly possible that we're going to see Karen 3 there.
That's a cop-out when you move up. That's a cop-out when you move up, in my opinion. Unless you're really tight, it's a cop-out.
You kind of broke up a little bit there. Did you mention a potential 154 fight there? I don't know what happened.
No, I was talking about when people talk about moving up after a bad performance. To me, that's always a cop-out. That's always an excuse. Well, I didn't perform well because I'm going up. And you could take it as you want to take it, but I always hate when people say that because you've got to finish this job first. But he always keeps saying that nobody wants to fight him. So I'm I wouldn't say I'm tuned out on Boots, but I'm not going to be as tuned in as I was.
No, I'll watch it. I mean, I don't have any doubts that he's still a talented guy, and there's some big wins out there for him to take. I just think this coronation of him that he was going to, that he was the cleanup guy at 147 is incorrect there. Jim Brown in there is very, very high on Karen. No, it's all good, man. I appreciate that you have that. I think he did show a different look last night. He had some decent footwork in there as well. As all these Ukrainians do, they're just better in the foot game than their opponent more often than not. But yeah, I don't think he's champion level, but he's probably a top 15 guy, honestly, especially in this welterweight division. Danny, let me throw this at you, though. He said he would only stay at 147 for one of the other champions. Would you be taking Stanionis over Boots at this point in time? Do you think that's a really competitive coin flip fight for you?
It's definitely a competitive fight, and I agree with I think it was Justin was saying, we've all just based off very little sort of crown Boots the best welterweight in the world. His best wins aren't much, if any, better than Stanionis's best wins. Stanionis, in any time I've watched him, hasn't delivered as flat a performance as we've seen, obviously, against Chukhadzhian last night. I wasn't particularly impressed with him against Avanesian. I know he dominated the fight and got the stoppage, but that was a 36-year-old well past the sell-by date Avanesian, who was even at his on short notice and even at his best was a European level fighter and could hit loads. The one thing I would say about Ennis is he appears to have quite a good chin, and it's a good job he does have a good chin, because if he didn't, he would have been in real trouble in that fight, the amount of clean shots he was taking. But if I was him, I would stay at 147 for a while anyway. Maybe target the Brian Norman Jr. fight potentially. I know that's one that was being discussed and offers were made, because I think he's in a lot of trouble against multiple fighters at 154, unless it is the situation that a couple of you have alluded to, that he maybe doesn't get up for fights against the likes of these guys. But I can buy that argument if we've seen him, say, deliver a clinic and then the next fight it's a bit flat, but it's just been flat recently. I mean, what's he done that's particularly impressive, bar the Sergey Lipinets win in the past 3 years? Okay, he looked good against Romain Villa, but Romain Villa got stopped by an Argentinian club fighter in 3 rounds last month. So I think,
yeah, that wasn't a good comeback fight for Villa there. That didn't go well at all.
Yeah, crazy, wasn't it? So I don't know. I've got big question marks. I do think he's overrated, only because he's sold to us as a pound for pound talent who can beat Terence Crawford, and like Terence Crawford at welterweight, there's no way Chukhadzhian is seeing the final bell. I think we're all in agreement, Butch has got a lot of talent. He's very athletic. He can punch to a level. I don't think he's a KO artist, but even offensively, I don't think he's got a particularly good fight IQ. He even said himself he was smothering a lot of his own work. I think if he had went to the body a bit more, he would have been able to stop him. If only he had a cornerman who could maybe tell him that. That's laughable, but yeah, definitely a lot more questions than answers for me. And I think you could even see the press conference for a fighter who just won in his hometown. It was a fairly dejected mood from Butch, from Bose, from Eddie Hearn as well.
Yeah, they weren't happy with it because they really thought that they're going to be able to outdo their first performance against Sarkisian. They thought, oh, we know a few things. And instead that script was definitely flipped on him. And instead he found himself in a really difficult fight. And for Boots, one of the things that, I mean, he's obviously skilled. He's got punch. But one of the things that made him, very dangerous at 147 is he's a very big welterweight. But he's not necessarily a very big welterweight. He's a big welterweight. And he's going to kind of be an average junior middleweight when he gets up there. So we'll see what's next for him on the horizon. If he can get one of those unification fights or not, or if he's going up to 154, it'll be interesting. He still plays. He's a very solid fighter, but I don't think he's a pound for pound top 10 guy, and I don't think he's knocking on that door. He just does not have the W's to qualify for that one. But a guy who was on the undercard, oddly enough, in Philadelphia, is Jesse Bam Rodriguez, who stopped the incredibly experienced former titleist, never been stopped before, Pedro Guevara, in 3 rounds. Just put him down once in the third, and then he finished him off with a nice uppercut. Just so slick, so sneaky. He's an incredible fighter in a league of his own at 115. They want him to unify, but this guy, it shows a big difference. If I'm looking at a pound for pound guy, Des, this is the kind of stuff that I want to see going in and stopping a guy who's never been stopped before, being explosive, showing tricks and slips and moves that 99% of the other guys don't have. And that's what we're basically getting every time that Bam Rodriguez steps in the ring. And last night against Guevara was just another example, as he took out an incredibly experienced former Titleist. Never been stopped before.
Your former world champion and at one point one of the best super flyweights in the world, Guevara. So Bam is probably one of the top 5 pound for pound guys. That mythical title, that pound for pound thing. I think Bam's in the top 5 for most people. I think most people in the chat and on the panel today would accept that Bam is a serious operator. He can do everything. He knows how to go looking for you. He knows how to get you on the hook. He knows how to finish you. He can punch with both hands. What's so impressive about Bam is he's really comfortable in the mixer. He seems to be comfortable in the pocket. He knows how to find spots, and when he lands, he hurts you. And we saw that yesterday. I'm really big on Bam. I think he's a joy to watch. I think in my lifetime, there's been 2 little men. And when I say little, I mean bantamweight down. And that's been a new way in Chocolatito. And although we've seen brilliant fighters come from bantamweight and go up to featherweight, people like Morales and Barrera and Pacquiao, Marquez, that I think at the moment, operating at Superfly, I think Bam, along with Chocolatito and Inoue, down there, I think he's one of the best guys of my lifetime. I think he's very, very good. We've seen him, I think he stopped 9 of his last 13. That's a phenomenal record down there. We see him chase down and stop the brilliant Estrada. We see him retire Sonny Edwards. This guy is the real deal. Whether it's his hands, his feet, whether it's on the inside, throwing hooks, uppercuts, whether he goes long, whether he's going backwards, whether he's coming looking for you. There's not much I haven't seen Bam do, and what he does really well. I'm really big on Bam Rodriguez. Last night, it didn't surprise me, but it did impress me. He's a very, very good fighter.
Yeah, and he's pound for pound. I don't know yet if he's in that conversation where we're like, who's number one? Is he one of the number one A, B, C, D guys, as we're looking over this? But is just one of the most incredibly talented fighters out there. And I'll tell you what, I got to put Estrada in that same breath with Chocolatito and Rodriguez. I think that he was the other standout guy in that bunch, and I don't necessarily know that Rodriguez and Estrada live without each other. I think kind of like Pacquiao and Marquez, they needed that trilogy for when it came to each other. So just to build each other up.
But what I like about Bam is it all seems to come so natural for him. It almost looks effortless from terms of his facial expressions, his body language, his shape. If you want to put it on him and create a mixing effect, he's comfortable in the pocket. If you want to go and box and try and go backwards, he'll come looking for you. His feet are as good as his hands. They really are. He doesn't ever put himself in trouble. He's a very, very capable fighter, Bam. We talk about this pound for pound thing, and it's a conversation that can never be proved or disproved. It's what you look for. But in terms of pure fighter, particularly down at Superfly, stopping 9 of his last 13, and the type of guys he's beating and the way he's beating them, you'd have to have a very strong argument to put anyone. If you could find 3 fighters in boxing today that are above Bam Rodriguez, I'd be very surprised with that. He's a complete fighter for me at the moment, Bam Rodriguez.
Yeah, and they talk about potential unifications for him and things like that, and I don't know as far as that goes at 115. I'm gonna look up and see what might be going on there, but I just honestly for me, I think what I would really like. I know they want Nakatani to move up to 122 to fight Inoue. But I would like to see Bam fight Nakatani at 118 more. That's just me personally.
Yeah, I like that, and I also want to draw back on something Michael Thompson said in the chat. He's got Bud, Inoue, Usyk, Beterbiev, and Bam in his top 5 in any order you want, I suppose. I've seen Bam do so much. I'd agree with that. I'd agree with Michael Thompson there. I'd put certainly my 4 would be Bud, Inoue, Usyk, and Bam. That's my top 4 pound for pound at the minute.
Yeah, I mean they're an incredible list of fighters for sure on there. It's what if let me ask you. I mean, first of all, Justin, this performance was just incredible. I mean, the over under on it was 9.5. Guy never been stopped. They were thinking, yeah, there's a fair chance that Bam stops him, but he's going to stop him late. Just obliterates him in 3. Are you putting him in your top 5 pound for pound at this point too?
Definitely, you have to. I mean, if you don't have, I mean, I can see people not, because I think the smaller weight classes don't get a lot of respect. I guess is the best way to put it. But just doesn't matter how big he is size wise, just pure skills and what he does, he is top 5. The only thing I worry about him is he's going the direction of the full body tattoos, and I see a neck tattoo coming. I see some kind of face tattoo coming. I mean, that's the only problem I have with the whole Bam thing. He's getting a little too addicted to his tattoos, which is just a stupid thing of mine. But I'm just, besides that, he's everything you want. He can fight any style. He's got power. He's got the jab. He can do whatever you want him to do. He's complete. And to be a top 5 pound for pound, you have to be complete, and he's complete. So yeah, he's definitely top 5.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of a diversion. I kind of wish Ames was still on here for this one. I was trying to go look up the ring rankings, but ringtv.com is currently offline because Danny Turkey Al Sheikh a few days ago bought Ring Magazine. An interesting development, definitely, when it comes to boxing journalism.
Yeah, I saw that actually. I mean, he's clearly got his eyes set on taking over a ranking system of sort and sort of rendering the governing bodies obsolete, because obviously I would assume when buying the ring, under that comes the ring rankings, under that comes the ring belt, which is obviously sort of more respected than any of the alphabet titles. So yeah, definitely not concerning at all, the ever-growing monopolization of boxing under this one man. Just to come back to Bam Rodriguez, like, there's obviously mad hype before every one of his like recent fights, and he somehow seems to exceed the hype every time. Like, what was most impressive for me, Matty, is you touched on how people and the bookies were expecting this fight to potentially go late, or maybe even some people I was saying that Bam might go to points, and that was sort of based on the fights he had against Gonzalez and the other fighter's name escapes me, but guys who sort of adopted a more back foot approach. And not that Bam struggled against them, but obviously they went the distance and he maybe didn't look as electrifying as he had prior to that. But he's clearly gone away and worked on cutting off the ring, because Guevara attempted to sort of get on the back foot and keep the fight long, and he was only able to sort of keep it that way for a round and a half, and from then he was fighting the rest of the fight in the corner. He couldn't get away from Bam, and he seemed to be punching harder by the fight. He's, for someone who's so aggressive, he does not take many clean shots. I mean, he could hit a couple of times in there, a few body shots, but most of the shots are at least partially defected by his guard, which is very strong. And yeah, I think he's going to take some beating, not just at super flyweight, but at 118 and above, if and when he does to move up. I think I agree with what you said, in that he's probably not in the conversation with your Usyks and Nunes, Crawford for that pound for pound number one spot based on resume and what they've achieved. But in terms of talent, I would not argue with anyone saying this is the most talented fighter in boxing. He's an absolute joy to watch.
Well, and I think he's a decade younger than all of these guys that we're discussing. He's just a baby in comparison, and he's building up that resume at this point in time.
It's scary what he could go on to achieve, and I think his ceiling potentially could be quite high in terms of the weights, because obviously he'll not be knocking guys out in one punch. You would imagine if he was to go up a weight class, 2 weight classes, God knows 3 weight classes in a few years. But with his style, I could still see him forcing stoppages over bigger fighters just through accumulation. And he's obviously a fantastic boxer technically, so he could win fights on points as he goes up the weights as well.
When he's not knocking people over, he's kind of like Lomachenko when he's got those footwork angles. He puts them together where you'll get guys like Nicholas Walters who are just like in the corner. They're just like, fuck this. Like, what am I going to do?
100%. And people have like drawn comparisons to the way Inouye's moved up the weights and how they think featherweight might be his ceiling. And obviously Inouye is so much more than a puncher and knockout artist. But I think you lose more from Inouye when the power stops having effect than you do from Bam Rodriguez, which is why I think his ceiling in terms of weights could be very high.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, I'm going to throw this one over to Dez now. Dez, the one fight as I'm going through these 115 rankings, I forget about it. He's a unified champion now with his victory over Kazuto Ioka, who I obviously highly rate. But Fernando Martinez, very sharp fighter. He's one of those guys that even though I would pick Bam against him, the bookies would pick Bam against him, obviously, probably by a fairly wide margin. He's a very capable fighter, good combinations, great balance. And I think that's a worthy test for him at 115 as I think about it. And I don't know why a guy holding 2 other belts didn't hit me upside the head.
Yeah. And Daniel Martinez is the natural next pick. But do you think there's something happening at Superfly similar to what's happening at Super Bantam in Inouye's kind of cleaned out Super Bantam? Do you think Bam has cleaned out Superfly and we're just thinking we're not looking at someone that can beat Bam, but just someone that can give him a reasonable test?
No, I'll make this argument. He hasn't cleaned out super flyweight at this point in time. What he has done is he has essentially cleared out a generation from super flyweight.
So you think Daniel Martinez could be someone that could possibly beat Bam, or you just give him a good fight?
He's one of those guys where you could see him potentially lasting 12 rounds and being pissed off at the results of the scorecards. You know, kind of like Juan Manuel Marquez, Pacquiao 2 kind of thing, you know. But I don't think it. I think he might feel like he has an argument, but it's one of those fights where I think that Bam has to go the distance, and he's going to be forced to work, and he's not going to win it wide. But he'd still take a W, even if it should be a draw. He'll still take a W.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with that. But what I like about Bam, and look, I want to be clear here. And I think Danny summed it up lovely. Like, he's a joy to watch. He has pretty much an awful lot of facets in a boxer that we enjoy watching. And you look at Bam and think, well, if we get another 2 years on this type of trajectory, where's Bam going to end up? Because he seems to do everything well. This isn't a guy that's a weight bully. This isn't a guy that is just a big puncher. This isn't a guy that, you know, has got good feet. He seems to have a bit of everything. And I look at, say, down at Superfly, and I've watched quite a bit of Martinez. I'm not quite sure how Martinez takes Bam out of a comfort zone. I mean, Estrada couldn't do it, and Edwards couldn't do it. Last night we saw Bam in first gear. So I'm not quite sure, having looked at Martinez over the last 18 months, what he's going to do to take Bam out of a comfort zone. So that tells me, well, Bam's going to be pretty much having it his own way. And he's got really good hands. He's good in the mixer. He's good on the back foot. He's got really good feet. He positions you into angles. He finds spots. I'm not quite sure how Martinez would ever beat Bam Rodriguez, but I'm with you. I think that's the next likely opponent, and it's one I'd like to see. But I just think when I look at down at super flyweight, I don't see anybody there that gives Bam an argument. And I just think Martinez might be the one that could give him a decent fight. But even then, I think it's a Bam win all day long. I think the only way we if we're going to plot maybe Bam's next 18 months to 2 years, I think we see him creep up to bantamweight and maybe chuck himself in with all them brilliant Japanese fighters they've got out there at the moment and we might find out a little bit more about Bam if he does that. But I think if he stays at Superfly, I think he becomes the Inoue at 115.
I honestly would make the argument that if he decided to go up to 118 pounds and he beat Nakatani, that he could retire right then and there, and he'd be a Hall of Fame fighter, overdone with right then. Less than 25 years old to go open a car dealership.
But I want to make the point, because we're not just, on the pod here, we're not just talking about Bam Rodriguez like this because of last night. We've been talking about Rodriguez like this for the last 12 to 18 months. We're big on him. Danny summed it up. He's a joy to watch. He really is. So I agree. If he goes up to 118 and he fights and beats a Nagatani, we've really got something here.
Yeah, and I'll be looking forward to that one if it does happen. But we'll see what happens. I think the Martinez fight isn't out of the realm of possibility. I don't think he's super tied to PBC anymore. I mean, he's over there fighting in Japan and such. So, but
I just want to ask you a question, Matty, if I may. And
sure.
I'm throwing it out to the guys on the panel and the guys in the chat. I've been scratching my brain. I've been trying to work out who it is. Just going back a step to Boots, and he's come under a lot of criticism on the back of last night, and we have to contextualize that performance, where it was, how it was, the type of fight he was in there. We're very stubborn, capable, world-class operator. I'm gonna ask you a question. Who am I? I got a split decision against Robin Reed that a lot of people thought I lost. I then went to points with Rick Thornberry. I then stunk the house out on points against David Starry. My next fight was Omar Shaker, and if I didn't win that, I wouldn't have a career. And everybody told me to get rid of my trainer. Who am I talking about? What Hall of Fame fight is that?
Joe Calzaghe.
Yeah, it's very similar to very similar to Boots at the moment. I think we've just got to let Boots marinate a little bit. I think he's a talent, and I think the better the fighter, the best you'll see out of Boots Ennis. I don't think last night was good for Boots, but I think he's got it out of the way, and we should draw a line under it. But I think he's still a talent, and I still think he could go up to, say, 54 and mix with a Madrimov or an Ortiz. I really do.
It's just one of those weird things, before we move on, just where, two fighters both got a win last night, but we're analyzing one from a positive place of what's their ceiling, and we're analyzing the other one from a negative place of what's their ceiling.
I know, and boxing is about snakes and ladders at times. And when we're looking at guys trying to fight for pole, and in a sense, Keyshawn and Abdullah Mason, they're fighting for pole down at 135. And although Boots is the IBF world champion at 47, he still lives in the shadow of great 147 fighters. And we're just trying to see how good these guys are. And if they show us a little chink, we knock them down a bit. I still think Boots is that talent, but I think he needs a challenge now. His resume is not good enough for the kind of bill he's getting. But I think we need to see him step up and take on a recognised name fighter. If that's not a 147, then go up to super welter and do it there. But I think he's a talent, Boots.
It does sound like that's where he's going, is to 154. But, speaking of, people who have to figure out something after the night, but this one's taken an L. We'll hit this one first. Danny, Khaleel Co, after looking sharp in the first few rounds, all sorts of nice little slick, simple defensive maneuvers, not, big hurling body motions, just tight motions. Then he started getting touched by Manuel Gallegos. Then he went down from Manuel Gallegos. Then he got stopped by Manuel Gallegos. So this formerly 9-0 fighter, he's going to have to go back to the drawing board after this one, because Gallegos, coming off of that loss to Diego Pacheco, Danny, he just lit Co up, and he couldn't take the punch.
That's right, Matty. Yeah, it went from good to bad to absolute catastrophe. Didn't, and you mentioned there, he started really well behind the jab, keeping it long, using the amateur pedigree. Maybe not at any point hurting Gallegos, certainly upstairs, but looked as if this was a fight he was going to be in complete control in. And you mentioned the the Pacheco loss for Gallegos, and you can look at that on BoxRec or whatever and think, oh, he got blown out in 4 rounds. But he was really competitive in that fight. He just got caught with some sickening body shots, and Pacheco was obviously a devastating puncher to the body. And then after having that early success, Khaleel Co inexplicably decided to try and walk Gallegos down with his hands up, playing completely into his hands, a TikTok Mexican who's made a career out of fights like this. And then that's how Gallegos was able to start having success. And that body shot, I mean, it just stuck with Khaleel Co the full fight. I mean, the whole 5th round after it, his right elbow was glued to his hips, and Eddie Hearn, after the card, was talking, and he says, oh, his conditioning was terrible. I mean, maybe that body shot just took the legs from him, because he tried to get back behind the jab after being dropped by that body shots, but didn't have the tank left to do it, wasn't able to do it. And I think it was because of the body shot. I don't think it was he just gassing in 4 or 5 rounds for no reason. That body shot just took the life out of him. And one thing I'd like to touch on was, we've talked a bit about cornering tonight with Ennis. What was his corner do sending him out for that 9th round? I mean, that he said to his fighter,
Yeah, that was a short round.
Oh, I've never seen a shorter round. But he said to his fighter, I want to stop this. Do you want to continue? He says nothing for 10 seconds. You're having to physically shake him, and obviously he's not going to turn around and say no. Fighters are always going to say, yes, I want to continue. The ref's saying he wants to stop it. I mean, pull your man out. There was no need for him to go out in that 9th round, all 7 seconds of it. And yeah, it was a disaster, particularly because, like, in his first few fights as a professional, people were not really sure about Khaleel Co. He had that draw, but it felt as if he had turned a bit of a corner, and he was starting to look like a potential, future world champion at light heavyweight. And off the back of that, you'd be very brave to back Khaleel Co becoming a world champion, really.
Yeah, I don't reckon that's going to happen at all. Justin, it was a rough night for Khaleel Co, but you got to give credit to Gallegos there. There's some guys that they're not going to be a champion, but they're going to give a lot of people trouble and tell you that they're not going to be a champion either. And he did the job. He'll come back and get another paycheck, but I don't know where Khaleel Co goes from here. Justin, what would be your advice? Become a boring fighter, stick with those fundamentals, and let people boo you?
Yeah. I mean, it works. I mean, you make money off of that, but I agree with what Danny said. I hate watching boxing when I always call them a really brave corner. They're not going back out there. And they just keep sending the guy and sending the guy. They're not taking the shots. They're not, future career is not getting ruined. And they just keep saying, you know what? Go another one. He's beating the crap out of you. Go another one. We'll sling you back out there again. And that's what sucked. Because, like I said, I think y'all just said it, the most worthless round I've ever seen to send a guy back out. But Co, he didn't lose. He got beat up last night. He got outmanned. He got just beat up. He got bullied. Those are the hard ones to come back from mentally, because you didn't just lose, you got your ass whooped. So those are the ones where you've got to, like, how bad do I want it? What do I have? I mean, those are the ones he needs to stay out for a little bit, regroup, maybe sit there and ask his corner, hey, why'd y'all send me back out again? Find out if they're really his friends or not, because like you said, he didn't even respond.
What round did you bet on, boss? What round did you bet on?
Yeah, he didn't even respond. He was just looking at him like, he didn't even know where he was. And, like, I think he said Eddie Hearn said, about he wasn't in great shape. But hey, that's just don't make excuses. He's not in great shape. Well, that's not really a good excuse. That makes it look even worse for him. That one of my fighters just showed up and didn't even train. So that even makes it worse that the excuse was he wasn't in shape. So it's bad. I mean, his career is not over, but I never cared about him anyway before, and I don't care after this. So if I see Khaleel Co, I don't think he's going to be anything. So it's like, hey, let him make some money. If they want to keep throwing him out there, I don't care either way with him.
Yeah, that one, it kind of made a statement as far as where Co's going to go. We'll see if he ends up as cannon fodder for someone else if they try to slowly build him again. But it's going to take some work, and he might have to be a boring fighter if he's going to ever achieve his dreams. We will see. A guy who was on the comeback trail and did a good job last night, Raymond Ford, picking up a unanimous decision over Orlando Gonzalez, who, man, he's as tough as they come. He went down from some hard right hooks from Raymond Ford, who still has a lot. He walked Gonzalez down. He did what he had to do. Unfortunately, ran into a tough guy who got a little negative at times as well in order to try to see his way to the final bell there. But I'll tell you what, something that was interesting on there, Des, that they said in the DAZN commentary, and I got to give them credit for this because, damn it, they nailed it. Now, I know it's from the opposite side with Ford being a southpaw, but his left hook is the way that Mayweather used to throw his left hook. He kind of do like that, like little bit of a 3-4 inch dip down to get a bit of leverage, and you couldn't tell exactly what he was going to do, and you felt like it was coming as a jab, and he'd come around with it. But he throws that freaking hook just the way Mayweather threw his left hook.
Do you mean his lead hook, Matty?
Yes. Yeah.
So his right hand. Yeah. It's so. I was watching it thinking he's feinting the jab, but it wasn't really an obvious feint. It was almost like a little twitch of the wrist, and it was a brilliant shot, and it caught Gonzalez out a few times last night. So just to go back to that point, and it's a great point you make. It's if you can imagine, if someone's going to feint a jab, and then they hook from it, he doesn't quite feint it. He just twists it or spins it or tweaks it. And that's enough just for the other opponent to drop his hand, and he comes around the corner. And he somehow knows how to deliver it just right, because Ford's not a puncher, but he knows how to really snap his shots, and he's a very fast-handed puncher. I don't quite know how to get the best out of Raymond Ford. I think he's a talent. I like Raymond Ford, and I think up at 130 now. Well, I presume he's going to stay. Was that at Super Feather last night, Matty?
Yeah. First one at Super Feather after losing the ball.
So I think that result's going to look amazing for Nick Ball over the next couple of years, because I think Raymond Ford is going to go and have a really good run at 130. We just probably need to work on, is Raymond Ford the guy that's going to stop opponents? Is he going to get to them late? And if he's going to do that, I think he needs to show a little bit more of that brilliant variation he's got, them quick hands, the snappy punches. He's a brilliant southpaw. He knows how to box like a southpaw. There's not much more I can say about Raymond Ford that I haven't already said. I think he's a huge talent. I thought him and Nick Ball had such a close fight. On the night, I just had Raymond Ford edging it, but it was a close one. No complaints. Nick was brilliant that night as well. I think Raymond's a great talent, and that's a great point about that lead jab. He knows how to just tweak it and bend it so he can hook off it. And last night, we even see him throw uppercuts off of it as well. He's a very, very talented fighter, Raymond Ford. And I said to you last week that 130's got talented fighters, but it's bookended between two brilliant weights in lightweight and featherweight. And I think there's a little bit of a vacuum at 130. And I think, although there's good fighters down there, I think Raymond Ford could be the one that can pick up a few titles and be the number one down at Super Featherweight. I think he's a very good fighter, and last night was a really good performance.
Yeah, it absolutely was a very good performance for him, and I wonder where he is going to go from here. I got to tell you, Annie, one of the things that disappoints me is the fact that O'Shaquie Foster for the foreseeable future is with Top Rank, because I think Raymond Ford against Foster is actually a hell of a fight.
Yeah, be a brilliant fight, that, and I think that's the one that Raymond Ford wants. I think there's been a bit of beef between him and O'Shaquie Foster over the years. I think he alluded to it in a couple of the interviews I watched. He was just brilliant, wasn't he? I mean, I think he is developing into a bit of a puncher. I think in that third round, that knockdown was heavy, and it was also an exceptionally long count that Gonzalez got. And if it hadn't been for the extremely negative tactics in the last two rounds, I mean, he was literally just running away, purely trying to to maintain his record of having never been stopped. I mean, he would have been stopped. Ford clearly went in there with a point to prove. He was obviously looking to become the first man to stop Gonzalez, and couldn't have claimed much closer to doing it. And to touch on some of what Des was talking about, I think he could very well become the consensus number one at 130 pounds, provided Eddie's able to deliver him the fights to do so. What's mad for me is that the stylistic change in Ray Ford over the years. I think the first time, not that I ever watched him, but was ever sort of engaged with a fight of his, was when he fought Edward Vasquez. And I remember thinking, this is one of the worst robberies I've seen. I mean, he got battered that fight for my money. It was very, very fortunate I can't remember if it was a draw or he actually got the decision, but was very, very fortunate. And that was when he was adopting a more sort of back foot style. He looked almost timid, to be honest. And his whole demeanor, his whole approach now, he's turned into, I wouldn't even call him a boxer puncher. I think the commentary said it. He's like a puncher boxer. He's so aggressive. And I think up at 130, he made no secret of the fact 126 was getting very tough for him. He had planned to move up after the Kolmatov fight, but the money on offer to fight Nick Ball in Saudi Arabia was too much to turn down. And I agree with Des. I had him Nick in the fight, and he actually hurt Nick Ball in that fight momentarily in the sort of later stages. And Nick Tall, I mean, was very, very, very tough. Appears to have a very good chin. So I think provided the right matchups present themselves and promoter politics don't get in the way as much, which they don't seem to be at the minute, I think Ray Ford could very easily become the man at 130.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. The talent level on the whole is less at 130 pounds, but I think there's a lot of guys who are competitively matched there. When you look at it, it's not a 135 buku talent situation, but I think there's just as many competitive fights to make there. Justin, I'll give you the last shout on this card. Also on that one, who did we have that was coming back from a loss on there as well? I think
Ammo Williams.
Yeah. Coming back from his loss to Hamza Shiraz. And just so he got a little win over Gian Garrido. I didn't get a catch this one, but apparently he was struggling early before he got that stoppage. Your final thoughts on this DAZN card?
Yeah, the Williams fight was pretty good. He took a lot of shots. Garrido hit him. I mean, Garrido, I wouldn't say he hurt him, but he stung him a lot. And Williams just looked, I don't know what it was. He just didn't look all the way there. He was taking a lot of shots. He wasn't really sharp. And then later in the fight, he just started landing some good shots, and Garrido went down. It was simple as that. It's just like he turned it up just a little bit and started focusing a little bit more, and Garrido just went down. I mean, Ammo Williams he's a decent fighter. I think he's going to kind of fall in that category of not gatekeeper. I think he's better than a gatekeeper, but he's going to be like the level above gatekeeper. That kind of guy that if you can't beat him, then you can't win. So I think Ammo Williams he's good for the sport because you always have to have guys that can give you that test, and I think that's kind of where he'll be. But it was pretty good fight for as long as it lasted.
Well, and if he's as much of a fighter as people think he is, that loss to Hamza Shiraz is not going to look that bad as time flows on. That currently is the best win on Shiraz's record. And there were moments where Williams got to him for sure, stung him in that fight. He just he just might have ran into who happens to be the uncrowned best middleweight in the world. I mean, we'll see soon enough with Shiraz. I think he'll make that statement next year if he gets the chance. But Williams, he could still probably be a tight list in the right condition.
I couldn't agree more. You kind of preempted what I was going to say, Matty. I think we know that middleweight is a little bit vacant at the moment, and there's not a lot of big names there. And I'm not saying Ammo can go near a Lara or a Janibek or even a Carlos Adames just yet. But I think if you can keep Ammo at the weight and the next 18 months, teach him how to be a bit cuter. He seems to like the fight. He likes to punch up. And I don't think that works for him. I don't think he's heavy-handed enough, and I don't think he's snappy enough. But I think the kid's got something. And I think if you can just keep him at middleweight, let the landscape sort itself out a little bit. I don't think the Hamza Shiraz defeat will hurt him. I think Hamza goes on to be a good fighter, and I think Hamza will win a version of a world title. So I don't think that's going to hurt him. I just think it's about keeping Ammo at the weight and teaching him, just coaching him. He needs to be coached. At the moment, it looks to me like he's not really got a plan B or a plan C. He doesn't look cute enough, particularly in the early rounds. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see in the next 2 or 3 fights, someone get with Ammo and say, look, we're gonna be cute in the first quarter of this fight, and then we're gonna bring you into the second half of this fight, and just coach him a little bit better. But he's got something, and I would like to say this as well. I love these stories in boxing where we see him get beat by Hamza on a big card, and his promoter said to him, "Don't worry, I'm going to get you on another big card out in America next, and we'll bring you back." I absolutely love that.
Yeah, they're not throwing in the towel on him at all. And there's plenty of good fights to be made out there. It's 160. All these will come back. A lot of that talent at 154 is going to find its way to 160. And you give it 18 months, and we're probably going to be talking about what an interesting division 160 pounds has become. So, yeah, it's boxing always changes. There are ebbs, there are flows with every division. But then there are sometimes potential new waves that roll into divisions where you're wondering, man, how good could this guy be actually? Well, that might have been the case on Thursday night from Canada when it came to Isley Iglesias getting another win over God. Hold on, I getting up
Ivanov.
Here. Just thank you very much. Yeah, Petro Ivanov. I can remember one of his names. And I'm just beating him. You want to talk about a guy with a punch, all sorts of variety. This guy is it. He's Cuban. He is tough. And I am very, very curious where his career might go. Des, I know that this guy could be your argument for prospect of the year. You think 2025 might be his real coming out party if he gets a chance. And yeah, I think he's right. He's right up there with David Morrell in that more impressive new generation of Cubans who are more offensively minded, incredibly accurate power punchers. And this kid, man, I think the only way for him is up.
Yeah, I agree. I've been speaking about this kid for the last 12 months. I might have the numbers wrong, but something like this. He was a 4 or 5 time national Cuban runner-up. So he missed out on the big tournaments, but by a whisker. And you know that the bar's so high in Cuba, it's like being in Russia. It's like the 50 states of America. You know, sometimes coming second or third don't mean you're a bad fighter. It just means you was picked by a very good fighter.
They have more meaningful gym sparring than fights that show on people's amateur records.
Now, my friend in the chat, Jim Brown, he don't go big on guys too early, and I make Jim right. I don't want to go too big on Iglesias too early, but everything I'm seeing, I like. You're absolutely right. He's a Cuban, but on the front foot, he's very, very offensive. He goes looking for you. I was speaking to Danny, our friend Danny, on the panel. I spoke to him in the week about Iglesias, and Danny told me, you know, he noticed that he's got a serious lead right hook, and he's right. He leads off with it. He's a southpaw with a brilliant right hook, and he puts you on the hook, and he puts you in trouble with it, and he throws that left hand, the backhand, straight after, and he puts you in the mixer. He's very purposeful. He's got an imposing style, and he reminds me a little bit of 168 version of Ike Quarte. He comes looking for you with his lead jab, and he starts throwing hooks around the corner. Look, it's very early days. I don't want to get in trouble with Jim Brown in the chat. I don't want to overhype this kid, but I think he's going to be my 2025 coming out star. And they're matching him. They're matching him tough because Ivanov was a good fighter in himself. They're both based in Germany, and they've got big hopes at Ivanov. So to put them in together like that, someone's had to go. I'm big on it in Glazier. I'm interested to see where he goes in the next 12 months. I want to see him get out into America. I want to see him sort of crack that scene a little bit. I don't want him to be sort of based in Germany or Canada. I want to see him getting with the big hitters like the Morel and Andy Cruz and these guys. I want to see really what they think of him. But for me, everything I'm seeing so far in terms of what he's been asked to do, how he's applied himself, what he's done, his size, his style, his variation of punches, the snap behind his shot. I think boxing fans, I think we've got one here at 68.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be something. And Danny, what's great about him is he's with Eye of the Tiger, and if I recall, Eye of the Tiger are the promoters of Christian and Billy. There's they have a handful of decent fighters at 168, but I kind of think if you're looking at fights down the road that are pretty mouth-watering, Iglesias against Billy is certainly a qualifier.
Absolutely. The only thing that would make me think that potentially isn't likely to happen soon is that I was over in Quebec for Beterbiev versus Callum Smith, and obviously Christian Billy was chief support, and it felt like the majority of the fans were there for him that night, and obviously he sold a lot of tickets for the fight with Sergey Deverenchenko, so I'm not sure how keen Eye of the Tiger would be to potentially sort of kill one of their stars before they get like a Canelo fight or a something where they're more likely to recoup some of the money on him. But it's definitely one for down the line. Say he does manage to land a fight with a Canelo or another marquee name and comes up short, they could maybe think, right, it's maybe time to roll the dice, potentially feed him to Iglesias if he continues on the trajectory that he does look to be on. It was my first time actually watching him live on Thursday night, and yeah, seriously impressive. As you've both been saying, he's got big power in both hands. It was that lead right hook that done the damage and left Ivanov wide open for the left hand that put the finish away. And he seems to have, from what we've seen so far, but everything. The only thing I would like to see is in that fight against Ivanov, he wasn't really tested on the inside. And the commentary mentioned it's not something that they've seen in any of his prior fights. So there's potentially question marks over how well he could handle a fighter who manages to take that distance away and makes it a bit more of a scrappy affair. But
Cubans are not pocket fighters. That seems to be a constant, even with these better offensive Cuban fighters recently. They're just not pocket fighters.
Yeah, but saying that, it's going to take some doing to take that distance away, because he's got an excellent jab and he's really good at just gliding his feet out of range. And then there's obviously questions over, I think he looks as if like he must expend quite a lot of energy, because he's always moving his head, he's always moving his feet, and he's got quite a high volume and he punches quite hard. So if a good, capable fighter can take him down the stretch whilst making him work and getting inside, that's a question you need to see answered as well. But offensively, he's a serious force, and mid to long range, there really doesn't seem to be too many holes in the offense. It's just those questions that you want to see answered from any sort of up and coming fighter. I would like to see potentially a Derevanchenko fight, maybe not next, maybe one more, and then go for him if he's still knocking about. Obviously, give a very good account of himself against Christian and Billy after sustaining an injury. So seems as if there's a bit left in the tank there, and you'd imagine there's some sort of relationship with Eye of the Tiger if they can get that one made.
Yeah, Eye of the Tiger seems to make some pretty decent fights as far as it goes.
They must have some sort of agreement with Top Rank though, because
they do.
Makhmudov, so that's going to be inevitable, isn't it? The Iglesias co-promotional with Top Rank.
When I see such. Sorry, Matty. Sorry, mate.
No, I think in Billy's next fight, you probably want to maybe cash out Bazinian for the whole Canadian, because I think they're both under Eye of the Tiger. So that's probably what I would look to cash out Bazinian, because he's ready to go. So that's the kind of fight I would look at, but they probably won't fight each other. I don't know if they're trained by the same guy or not, but that's who I would.
I also feel like a guy on the card last night, Stephen Butler, could be in the sweepstakes.
Oh, God. That's going to be a great knockout because Butler has been knocked out. He's been knocked out a couple of times. They've been great knockouts. So, yeah, that would be a good one because he's going to win and he'll look really good knocking Butler out.
He's, the thing, Butler, he can punch, though. He's kind of like a poor man's non-French David Lemieux in his own way.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a good test for the fact of, you're right, can Iglesias take it? Because Butler would go at him, and he would give him a fight. But I think the odds are you're going to win that fight, and it's also a name, and it's the whole Canadian thing. They'll sell a lot of tickets for that. So that, to me, you're right. Butler would be Butler, then maybe, I don't know who next, but for Iglesias, you're right. Butler would be the perfect step up. I mean, not really step up, but the perfect guy.
Yeah, it'd make him look really good, wouldn't he, Justin?
Oh, he'd make him look great because he would. Butler would hang for a couple of rounds, and then it would just be a spectacular face plant Butler on the ground knockout.
I feel bad because you feel like Butler's got to have some CTE at this point in time.
He's going to have it after that fight.
But judging by the pedigree behind a lot of these super elite amateurs, and looking at, say, the David Morrell model and how they've pushed him, and they're going to do Andy Cruz similar. And when you look at, say, them brilliant fighters down at 35 and the way they're getting them all in pole just behind the brilliant fighters already sitting there, I wonder, would they take the risk? I don't know how Danny sees it. You said Derevyanchenko, Danny. Would you, not now, not the next one, but maybe somewhere at the back end of 25, would you put an Glazier in with a Jaime Munguia or a Caleb Plant? Or bearing in mind the way we saw Benavidez deal with Andrade, would you fancy Glazier to do the same type of job on Andrade?
Yeah, I think Andrade, in particular, of the names you mentioned, looks to be sort of there for the taking. I mean, just maybe not all through his own wrongdoing, but spent his best years fighting guys who weren't on his level, not big fights, and then was past his best by the time Benavidez got his hand on him. The Munguia one's interesting. I mean, obviously he's with Top Rank now, and he's obviously still a ticket seller. So again, it just comes down to whether they think it works for them. But down the line, if they decide that Iglesias is the horse we want to back here, we've seen the ceiling of Jaime Munguia. He's obviously going to be, he is one of the best middleweights in the world, but even in the post-Canelo era, if they decide, he ain't going to be that guy, then again, I don't think it's a fight, in a year's time that would be too much for Iglesias if he has I think stylistically it's a good fight for him.
I think if you're going to talk about maybe Andrade not being too much for him, I think you probably got to suggest that Berlanga wouldn't be too much for him as well. Would you think?
I agree with you again. I think Berlanga was such a big, step up to fight Canelo from where he had been fighting. I mean, some people might say we're getting, carried away with, the likes of putting him with Berlanga next, but Berlanga's best wins, Paddy McCrory or what Martin Kosa is, it's not a huge jump from where Iglesias is. I don't think it's a fight Eddie Hearn will be in any rush to make, be Iglesias versus Berlanga. I think Berlanga again, to a point, can sell a ticket, can draw eyeballs. So as seems to be the case with every Cuban fighter, it's just going to be a case of getting people in the ring with them and making it worth their while, and potentially having to just get yourself into a mandatory shot because people aren't going to be in a rush to put their fighters in with Iglesias.
Yeah, I think Eddie's going to be looking to put Berlanga in with Pacheco.
Yep, without a doubt.
And Matty, at 168, putting Canelo to one side, there's probably 7 or 8 fighters all at the same sort of place on the same platform. So there's potentially loads of doors that can open. So not just an Glazier, but a Diego Pacheco, he could have an opportunity as well. If you could just take a big scalp, like a Plant or an Andrade or a Berlanga, if you could just step up a Munguia, lots of doors can open for you. And 168 is one of those divisions that's just brimming to go.
Oh, it is. And it's just what sucks about it is Canelo occupying the titles takes away that purse bid kind of option to force some of these fights to happen. And everything becomes completely voluntary. and it gives the promoters a chance to avoid these good fights. That's the thing that sucks about having a unified champion just sitting there holding the belts. The only belt that's open right now is the IBF with William Skull. And guess what? Iglesias and William Skull know each other from Cuba. So that's a fight that who knows if that one would get made. So I don't know what you're going to do there. But Rob Kelly knows what he's going to do. Everyone goes to Rob and asks him for advice. He's a wise sage. Isn't that right, Rob?
Especially about Cubans.
Yes, basically all things south of the equator you have a strong regard for.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but anyway, go ahead. Sorry, man. I came in now a bit late.
I thought I was talking about women with big asses, but I don't know.
Yeah, me too. But then you switched. I didn't know. I thought that was fucking what we were all talking about.
Isn't this the ass asylum? What
would have been a better title for the fucking. Would have been a better title for it anyway. We would have got more fucking hits online.
But anyways, we actually just wrapped up with this week's action. So if you want to let us know your thoughts on what you saw this weekend, we're gonna bounce along right after that into some previews, I think.
Yeah, no worries. I only really caught the kind of the lightweight bouts. And Bam as well. Obviously, fucking Bam's finish, man. Unbelievable step around. I'm sure you talked about it today. The technique on that guy, he's elite level. Like he's just, I think it's unfortunate for him in terms of, I think if he was like a welterweight up, he'd be like one of the biggest fucking stars in boxing. Like absolutely unbelievable. Then the Abdullah Mason fight, who's a sleeper for me, not a sleeper, but I know he's highly rated. But a lot of the talk and the praise and the plaudits go towards Keyshawn. But I like Abdullah Mason, man. I like that fight, that round. Like boxing, it can be so shit at times and it can be great. And that's one of those nights where you're not expecting anything and then just fucking hell breaks out. Like down heavily, fucking answers back while he's still buzzed. Really, really entertaining fight. Could have gone either way from there. Just a fucking shootout. The two of them just planted their feet and just let go. Like when he just bit down when he was hurt, responded, has a bit of dog in him. Really, really exciting fight. Like really exciting fight. Might have showed that he could be tagged, but at least he fucking showed his grit and determination and got back up. Keyshawn Davis, I said last week I thought he needed a bit of a statement, and that was a hell of a statement. Knocking out a guy in 2 rounds that's never been dropped or stopped before. Maybe the weight cut did have an effect on him, but that's not Keyshawn Davis's fault. He's just there to do what he can do. He looks... I don't know if he's... I'm going to be hypercritical of him now, and I sound a bit like Boxer Size Bane, but I don't know if you guys see it, but I think he's kind of caught between two styles. He's like he has a lot of Crawford's style in him. I know they train together. He has a lot of Crawford style in him, but he doesn't have the high guard that Crawford has when he's figuring guys out. Crawford kind of keeps his hands up high, and then shoots with his hands in a lower position. But he has that kind of turned in almost Philly shell style. But he's square on with it when he's pulling out. So I thought even in the brief moments that the fight was unfolding last night, that Lemos was getting off on him or had a chance to get off on him coming over the top. His feet look a little bit sticky. But that's like a hyper criticism. I think with the guys he's beaten on his record already, like Yigit, Pedraza, then blowing away Lemos, like he's on a collision course for the top guys. I think he's calling out Javante Davis, isn't he? I'd say him and Branchek is probably more likely next. But I think he deal with him too. I think he has levels to go. He has more stuff to show us. The punch selection after the fucking knockdown was really, really impressive. Like he drops him with the right hand, pulling, kind of going backwards. And then next knockdown was a fucking textbook left hook. And then the next knockdown, I think the ref should have stopped it then, by the way, because he fell. And I think he should, technically that should have been called off, wasn't it? Because he hit the deck and then he went to get back up and he fell over again. Isn't that not supposed to be an automatic stoppage? It was once upon a time anyway. Ref let it go. And then the next knockdown, he just went straight down to the body, dug the left hand into the body, another textbook left hook over the top, and then that's the ref is like diving like a goalkeeper to try and save him from any other punishment. So exciting, like it's only 12 fights, they're moving him along very fast. He's already calling for Davis, never going to happen, but he might be one of the guys that has to move up the weights and kind of win titles at different divisions to get the respect he deserves, because I think he's going to be in the Who Wants Him club for anybody at 35. But I want to see him and Mason down the line. Like I definitely want to see that down the line.
You know, and it sucks there's this promotional issues because when you really think about Tank against Keyshawn Davis, number one, it's Davis versus Davis. I mean, that's fantastic
Like a
right there.
lawsuit.
Yeah, number two, they're right there. They're from basically the same neck of the woods, kind of. I mean, I think Norfolk and Baltimore are probably within a couple 100 miles of each other, give or take. It can't be. Justin, you're kind of from that, or he's gone now, but it's not that far around there. So it's a big sell if they do that, rather than like they were doing with Lamont Roach and taking it to Houston, which makes no goddamn sense. So if they can get over those promotional issues, I think everybody can make money on this fight. And I think it's obviously a real test for both guys, but I think it looks better on paper if it's a unification and
if there's something at
Keyshawn
stake.
comes in with Branchek's WBO belt. But anything else you saw, Rob?
No, fuck all that.
He didn't see a whole lot of anything, but let's see. So, hey, before we go on real quick, Danny, why don't you hopped on with us today on a recommendation from Ames. So why don't you tell us about your work with pro boxing fans?
Oh yeah, mate. It's the similar to what Ames does. Run around, scurrying to get interviews, clickbait the fuck out of them. Simple stuff.
Yeah, but it's got to keep you on your toes, give you a little bit of entertainment time from time, and I bet if you can handle some awkward interactions, you have to get some good stuff out of it.
Oh, it's brilliant. Don't get me wrong. I mean, very lucky to be working in my favourite sport, of course. And as I'm sure Ames has touched before, you have the odd very long night, the odd sort of frosty interaction with someone and rub people up the wrong way. But I love it. Like, really lucky to be doing it.
Yeah, and those nights would be so much easier if cocaine was still considered socially acceptable.
Well, it's a conversation for another day, maybe, isn't it?
Goddamn PC culture.
I'm gonna keep him in his job. I'm gonna keep him in his job, man. He's fucking hell.
I said used to be, Rob. I offer cover.
Oh, you're right.
So, anyways, I'm going to hop over, do some previews here. We got a November 16th. That's going to be Saturday card from Riyadh. I think that'll probably happen for y'all in the evening. They'll put it on probably for us in the afternoon, and all will be well. Let's start from the bottom and work our way up. There's a couple of fights on here that I think are really worth doing. This is their Latino night. They're bringing all sorts of Hispanic people over to Saudi Arabia. I'm sure a good time will be had by all. Let's see here. I honestly don't know who's going to be filling in on this one. Honestly, Danny, maybe you can fill on this one real quick. I believe Kenneth Sims Jr. pulled out of his fight with Oscar Duarte. Do you know who they might be bringing in on that one?
I've not heard or seen anything. Disappointment because obviously Oscar Duarte, a good fighter to watch, entertaining style, and would have been a real test, I think, for Kenneth Sims Jr. But no, I'm no clue as to what the sort of replacement plans are.
Well, hopefully they get somebody decent in there, but we still have some good fights on there. Jose Ramirez versus Arnold Barboza Jr. I think that's a great fight there. Barboza really needed a fight of meaning to happen for him. William Zepeda against Tevin Farmer, 4 or 5 months ago, that fight would have seemed absolutely ridiculous if Tevin Farmer hadn't given Raymond Murataya a very tough fight. I think many people argued he deserved at least a draw out of that one. And then we have a unification on there with Oscar Collazo against knockout CP Freshmart for the 105-pound belts, both the WBO and the WBA on the line. And then Gilberto Ramirez and Chris Billam-Smith with the WBA and the WBO on the line in a cruiserweight fight there. This is a really strong card, actually, Des, when you break it down. I like, honestly, all those fights that were mentioned on there for various reasons. And they've stacked the talent once again with Riyadh season. Des, I think I'm sorry if I didn't direct to you.
Yeah, mate, I do. I like that card. I like the Billam-Smith one. It's going to be a real interesting fight for Chris. Do you want to know who I think wins it at Billam-Smith and Ramirez?
Oh yeah. We want predictions. Come on, we want predictions.
I want to be careful. I don't sort of drag fighters down and get too negative. But I'm waiting for someone to catch Billam-Smith out because it reminds me of a cruiserweight Dan Aziz. He's kind of mid-range at everything he does, and I think when the likes of Riyadh, Chamberlain, a Coley look back on their careers, I think they'll all kick themselves to a degree and think, how did Billam Smith outdo us all? And you've only got to put it down to perhaps the hard work of Shane McGuigan, the hard work of Billam Smith himself, the chemistry that got between them. So I didn't think Billam Smith would get past Riakpor's. I think that he could avoid Riakpor's punch for 12 rounds. But after the first 3 rounds, I could see that Riakpor weren't going to land it. I thought a fit Isaac Chamberlain might have fanned Billam Smith out. And I'm amazed that Lawrence Okoli got beat by him, having shared the same gym with him for so long. But I think I'm not going to back on it against him this time. I think he grinds out a win against Ramirez. I think he does the fundamentals very well. I think he's a very solid operator. And I think to beat Billam Smith now and become a little bit of a believer in the sense that you have to be very good at something. And maybe all the guys I've spoke about haven't been very good at any one particular thing. And that's been their undoing. I don't think Ramirez is particularly very good at one thing. And I don't think he's going to get past Billam Smith. I think Chris Billam Smith wins the decision.
Yeah, I think that is a possibility there, and Ames has joined us again. Ames, I think one of the things that hasn't been discussed. I mean, people are looking at the possibility, of CBS just running into big cruiserweight who kind of takes him down, but he's already fought big guys, and Gilberto Ramirez started his career at 168 pounds. So potential height advantage aside, Ames, I don't think that Ramirez is the bigger fighter here. And I don't think he's going to be able to out-physical CBS if that's what they might be thinking in this fight.
Yeah, you're sort of going on the right lines of what I'm thinking as well, too. So I'm glad you teed me up on this point, because I don't think Gilberto Ramirez is particularly a bona fide cruiserweight right now. I don't think he's settled in at the weight. I think he's particularly quite fleshy, although the signs have been there that he'd wanted to move up the weight, and he's ready to do so. I don't think he's settled in here. And you're up against someone who is a bona fide cruiserweight here, and Chris Billam Smith, who knows who he is as a fighter, has got a brilliant connection in the form of him and his coach, Shane McGuigan. I managed to catch a little bit of a glimpse of the training camp and some of the small bits of tactics or the way they're going to approach the fight here. And I think Chris Billam Smith kind of gets a little bit of the credit sometimes is lost when it comes to Chris Billam Smith. The way he's been able to show a lot of it is the physical element of it. He's able to make a fight attritional and be more durable than his opponent, be more physical, have a better gas tank, really kind of take it into some deep waters and get that out of the fighter. And if you can't swim in those deep waters, Chris Billam Smith is able to really kind of push you out the pool in that sense. And I think that's what Billam Smith does so great. And he mixes it in with good selection of shots. What he doesn't do, which has been said 1,000 times before with Chris, is his flaws, is his defense. He ships way too many shots in the ring, and eventually you'd bank, as boxing logic would tell you, that to catch up with him. And you might have said that in Riakpor's, you might have said that in Okoli, but it hasn't as of yet. I don't think it will catch up to him either against Ramirez. You've also got, and I mentioned about the connection in the corner with Shane McGuigan, who's one of the leading minds in UK boxing and world boxing. You've got someone who can spot just the most minor of things in a corner and turn that into something big that you can then adapt upon, and then base the finish off the fight off. Of putting aside the recent commentary surrounding AJ and Dubois, there was a moment in the fight against Masternak where Masternak was having that fight pretty much his way. It was a tough fight for Chris.
He was touching him. He was hurting him.
It was a real tough fight for Chris. But it sort of, if I remember it correctly, it sort of turned a little bit after the fifth or sixth round and eventually finished at the eighth. And what Billam Smith had started affecting more was trying not to go for the finish up the top, but really kind of punching down to the body, specifically to, I think it was I think it might be the left side rib of Masternak, because Shane McGuigan had sort of seen a little bit of what looked like some damage, maybe some scar tissue, maybe kind of, and looked to understand that this guy might have broken a rib in camp. So let's go there. Let's shift and adapt him. Let's go there and let's see if we can really put a dent in Masternak. And it did. It's what helped to lead to the finish. And I thought that was real clever from them in the corner. So you got someone in the corner that's spotting as nothing goes past Shane. And that's a real strength there. That's it. That's part of the sword. The shield isn't as strong as it could be, but I think this is a guy he's not just going to be too big for Gilberto Ramirez, but it's his offense that's going to see him through. It's his varied offense that's going to see him through, and he's going to be able to drain down Gilberto Ramirez. I don't think he'll get the stoppage here in this fight, but there'll be some hairy moments for Ramirez where he might have to survive a little bit. I think both of them might have to as well, too, because it's going to be, for me, I think this could end up being the fight of the year candidate between the two of them. I'll be very surprised if it doesn't end up high on the list of people by the end of this year. But I think it's going to be a real fun fireworks type of fight. And I think Crispin and Smith gets a victory, probably a split decision, but one that we boxing fans understand that he won wider than scorecards suggest.
And he's paying about 2-1 as an underdog too. So I mean, I think that's worth a punt. I mean, you consider that his resume at the weight, he's more sturdy at the weight as well. I think, I feel good about Billam Smith on that one myself on there. So maybe that was the kiss of death. Mr. Kelly, how are you leaning on that one?
Yeah, I like Billam Smith. I think probably the last nip and tuck fight before Masternak he had was the first fight with my old mate and good friend of the pod, Tommy McCarthy. The first fight that they had was a pretty tight one. The second one he made a count and he wore Tommy down and stopped him. And since then he's been on a fucking unbelievable trajectory. He got the reverse win over Riyadh, which was the only loss on his record. Lawrence Okoli, Masternak, like he's beating some fucking good guys, and his aim says like he ships shots, yeah, but how do you stop him? Because it's like you hit him and he doesn't get tired. And then he's the type of fighter that, as well as Ames is saying, like he's under the excellent tutelage of Shane McGuigan. I don't think it's there's any argument that he's one of the best coaches in the business. He knows his shit. He knows how to make adjustments on the fly, or at least deliver the instructions to the fighter to make adjustments on the fly. But the thing about Billam Smith is he just wears you down. It feels like he drowns you. Like he must be so fucking fit and strong. It's that like fellas don't seem to move him when they're hitting him, and then when they get into that second half of the fight with him, it feels like he just wins a war of attrition. Like he strangles fellas, like smothers them and breaks him down. Gilberto Ramirez is a bit of a fucking enigma, man. Like he was operating at 68, and I don't think he was in any of the Super 6 tournaments that were going at the time. It felt like he was ducking Benavides for a while. He moved 75. Now he's up at cruiser, but he's only lost to fucking Dimitri Bivol, which
he was impressed by Bivol. I mean, Bivol's Bivol, but he didn't have like his Richards moment against him or anything.
No, definitely not. No, he's soundly beaten, but like losing to Bivol, there's no shame in getting totally outboxed by Dimitri Bivol, is what I'm saying. He has beaten some good guys like Sullivan Barrera, Joe Smith, like these guys. Like I don't know what to think. I don't know really what this fight looks like. I think Billam Smith might be too physically imposing for this guy once the heat gets turned up in the second half of the fight. But saying that, like he hasn't looked like getting stopped or not beaten fuck up in any of his fights either. So I don't know will it be nip and tuck in the first 6 to 7 rounds and then him maybe get ahead from a technical perspective and look to close out the fight on distance. Like they're obviously going to be prepared for Billam Smith being like just coming with relentless waves as well. Like so, I'd say Smith decision. I'm gonna go Billam Smith decision on this one.
All right, Let's see here, Danny. What's your feeling on this fight? It definitely it's top on the card for a reason, and Ames gave it a heck of a promo there. I think that's worthy of anything they're trying to sell there. This is could be a little bit of a under the radar fight coming in for fight of the year. Do you think it's going to be a barn burner?
Yeah, I could see it being a very good fight to watch, which could be quite strange because obviously there's probably going to be about 200 people watching it in Saudi Arabia, which is going to be a bit of a shame. But I don't know, like, obviously the credit you boys have all been given, Chris Billam-Smith is fully deserved. I mean, to think he would become not just a world champion, but like an established world champion with, now, multiple defenses under his belt against really good fighters would have been very hard to believe, in the days he was going life and death with Tommy McCarthy. And the point you make about Shane McGuigan, he is without a doubt one of the top trainers in the country. He knows Chris Billam-Smith incredibly well. He knows how to, make him deliver performances that are so much better than, the sum of all his parts. But I've sort of gone back and forth in this fight a couple of times. I was really impressed with Zurdo against Gulamarian. It was a fight I picked Gulamarian to win. Obviously, he was coming into the fight off a year and a half, 2 years in activity, which potentially did show. But the performance Ramirez was able to deliver, his volume. I think he's a quicker puncher than Chris Billam-Smith. He's a more accurate puncher than Chris Billam-Smith, and the way Masternak was pacing him up in that fight, like, an aged version of Masternak, I just can't get that out of my head. And I think, obviously, it was a body shot, we assume, from Chris Billam-Smith that done the damage to Masternak's rib that meant he couldn't continue. But I do still think he was fortunate because that fight was getting away from him quick. And I can just see Zurdo building up an early lead that Billam-Smith might not be able to get back. It might be too many rounds down. I do anticipate him having success down the stretch. I mean, I saw some comments from Malik Scott, who's now apparently a part of Zurdo Ramirez team, that they expect Billam-Smith to tire.
Getting anywhere him with fucking getting anywhere him.
Yeah. I was like, he was saying, we expect Billam-Smith to tire down the stretch and we'll take over. Like, have you ever watched this guy fight? So that's the one thing, the inclusion of Malik Scott, that maybe doesn't make me as confident in Zurdo Ramirez, but I just fancy him to build up enough of a lead in the early stages with his, as I say, the volume punching, the crisper punching, and get the decision.
I felt pretty okie doke on Malik Scott, by the way, because I remember when he was
so did I
starting working with Wilder. Do you remember all the patter he was giving about after the Hellenius fight when they were talking about like Wilder holding the high guard and he was like, your life's on the line, and I was like, oh shit, here we go, this is the new Wilder, like, and then we saw what we saw, and the fucker was giving. No, I think he's just too busy with the OnlyFans and Kato Abdo and that. Like, maybe his mind's not on the job.
What would your priority be, Rob?
Kate Abdo and OnlyFans, like, but that's why I'm not a fucking coach, isn't it?
Yeah, Malik Scott's the ultimate pseudo intellectual boxing trainer. Like,
100%.
Oh my god, I don't want to hear it. But going back to something, to round off on what all the guys have said, and I think we're all in the same line with Billam-Smith, and I think it was Danny that said it, and I'm the same. I think Billam-Smith is one of the British boxing's biggest overachievers, and I don't mean that to be disrespectful to him. I think he's done ever so well and got as much juice out of his career as possible. He's with a really good trainer in a really good gym, and I'm really pleased for him. But it's very interesting when you get a kid like Billam-Smith, who probably wasn't meant to beat a lot of the guys he has beaten. I hold the Masternak performance against Billam-Smith, and I'm thinking, like, when you think like Billam-Smith beat Tommy McCarthy the way he did, then he beat Chamberlain, then he beat Akoli, then he beat Riakporhe. These are brilliant wins, and it's a fantastic run. But I'm still holding that Masternak performance against him a little bit. And it's something about a kid who's not always meant to be there, who's a bit of an overachiever, who squeezes every bit of juice out of their career. When they have a blip, I tend to hold it against them a little bit. And I'm hoping that's not going to be the case. I think everything we've seen in Billam-Smith comes good against Ramirez, and if you can not be bullied by Akoli and Riakporhe, you're not going to get bullied by Ramirez.
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable place to position to take. I think I mean they're both just absolute physical specimens, and Ramirez formerly 168. I don't think he falls into that category, but yeah, you might get a good amount of value on that one. Like I said, Billam Smith paying about 2-1 on that one. Barboza Jr. is paying just under that, pretty decently close odds on that fight as well. There's no odds on Collazo against CP Freshmart. And that one is an interesting fight. It's really going to be probably a first time for a lot of fans in the Western world to see CP Freshmart, who's a decent enough boxer. But I'm telling you guys, Collazo has a chance to be one of those lower weight guys who captures people's imaginations. He's from Puerto Rico, and much like Ivan Calderon, he has great boxing skills, but he can punch too. Great little southpaw, excellent right hook. And hopefully this is his real coming out party here as he works on unifying belts at 105 pounds. But this card, all in all, it's not all too bad. So that is going to be on Saturday, and everybody, I think, is looking forward to that. Anyone have any thoughts on the rest of the undercard on that one before we move on?
Matt, I just saw, by the way, they're getting Bortazon Akhmedov in as the replacement for Duarte. Remember when had that war with Kenneth Sims a couple of years ago?
That's a really good replacement on short notice.
Replacement. Yeah, it'd be an excellent fight, that.
Yeah, that's solid. Yeah, does anyone else have any thoughts on the undercard before we move on?
And then there's Zepeda and Farmer been confirmed.
And
Is that
Farmer.
going ahead?
Yep. As far as
you're really hot on Zepeda. How do you see that one going, Matty? We know who wins, but how do you see it going?
Farmer is obviously still a very, very talented guy. I mean, the troubles that he gave Murataya, I think the over-under on that one was like 5.5 rounds. Everyone thought he was going to get stopped. He had gotten dropped by some nondescript opposition as he was trying to get warmed back up into the sport. What he did with Murataya was quite a surprise. I think, though, this is going to show, considering that Murataya is considered kind of a blue prospect too, just how good Zepeda is, because I think he's going to overwhelm Farmer, and he's shown that he really knows how to shoot the left over southpaw just fine. He's going to pound him, and he's going to go a few rounds with him, but
there's something about the people behind Zepeda, Matty, and I know you're hot on him, and I really respect your opinion on fighters, but they won't put Zepeda in with a puncher, will they?
Yeah, I mean, and that might be the one thing that's kind of lacking at 135 pounds is away from, all the top rank prospects. You don't have a lot of big punchers at 135 pounds outside of Gervonta Davis. So, but we'll see. You might be onto something there, though. But he's a big boy at 135 pounds. So, I don't know. Go ahead.
If he goes past, when he gets past Farmer, we presume he's going to get past Farmer. If he was to fight a Shakur or a Tank, and we now know you're hot on him, how do you see that one going, Matty?
Say that again.
If Zepeda was to fight Tank or Shakur, how would you fancy him against them two?
I think that Zepeda versus Shakur has all the makings of being a very, very controversial fight a la Floyd Mayweather, Jose Luis Castillo. I think that what Zepeda does in the ring that would give so many fighters troubles, give him so many wins, are the same reason that he would probably get knocked out by Tank Davis in 6, 7, 8 rounds. He's just exactly what he's looking for an opponent as far as his style. I mean, I think he'll have his moments. He'll touch him, but he's just going to be there to get caught by him.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that card is going to be on Saturday. Going to go back in time to Friday to where I'm going to be in Dallas, Texas. Why? Well, we'll get to that later. Let's go through this undercard first before we hit the top 2 fights on this card. One of them most people think is a joke. The other one, a rematch of one of the greatest fights of the last 5 years. Let's see here. Lucas Body against Corey Marksman. That's an interesting 135-pound fight, actually. I'm looking forward to that one just a little bit. I don't know if I'll be there in time to catch it, but it would be worth it.
Those don't sound like real people. Come on.
Right? Yeah, unfortunately, they are. The fact there's a Corey Marksman who's a pretty accurate boxer
Corey
puncher.
Marksman sounds like a porn star, don't he?
Maybe. Also, Bruce Shushu Carrington getting out quickly after his rough outing last time, getting in there against Dana Coolwell over 8 rounds, just trying to stay active. Shadeja Green on this one, a chance at the vacant WBO women's super middleweight title, taking on Melinda Watpool. Haven't seen much about her, so I think I'll avoid probably talking about that one, even though I'm looking forward to it. It'll be nice to see Green. Let's see here. Niraj Goyat against Winderson Nunez. My God, I hope that's early in the night and I missed that one. I hope I'm having dinner when that one's going on. I've had contempt for Goyat ever since he fought Zepeda, the other Zepeda, and that one was a joke. Mario Barrios putting his WBC welterweight title on the line against Abel Ramos. Kind of a weird.
He's still a fucking world champion. What?
He's done well at welterweight. He beat what's his bucket? Ugas, who beat Pacquiao. So I don't know.
It's fucking years ago, is it not?
It's like 2. Yeah, that's like a year and a half ago. It's not that long, Rob. You're not aging.
Time waste for no man. I fucking am.
So I'm looking forward to all these fights on the undercard, except for the ones that I mentioned. Unfortunately, let's. Does anybody have any thoughts on that one before we get to the top 2 on there?
I don't know what the value is. I've got no idea. But I've seen Shadeja Green box. Who was the girl that
Franchise deserve?
Yes, the one that Savannah
Maddie's favorite.
The worst fight I've ever watched.
That was a very bad fight.
You watch her mouth talking about Maddie's favorite fighter like that.
Well, this Shadeja Green, she got beat by Franchon Cruz. So I don't know what the value is going to be like, Matty. But if there's any value in Melinda Watpool, perhaps a 5 or a 10 might be worth it. Like, I've seen Shadeja Green before, and she's not that good, although her record suggests she is. So if there's any value in the other kid, then it might be worth a 10.
Well, now I'm looking up Miss Watpool here. So she's 7-0 with 2 knockouts at this point in time. 35 years old. No real names on her resume that to speak of. And would it make you feel better or worse about your decision if I told you she was Canadian, Des?
Yeah, it doesn't put me a lot of confidence in that. If I know she's Canadian, to be honest, the way they match their fighters and the way they bring them along. However, I've seen Shadeja Green lose to Franchon Cruz, and she was awful. So I thought, wow. So if there's any value in the other one, Canadian or not, I might put a 5 on it myself.
Come on, Des.
The last women's tip I had was on this pod, and I think Aussie tipped Rachel Ball to beat Shannon Courtney, and he was bang on.
That's right, Rachel Ball.
In boxing, in women's boxing, you can get this one. You can get this right.
We started her off, basically, Rachel Ball. She was a guest here one Sunday night, and then she beat Shannon Courtney, and she was too big to come back on when we asked her back on, so fuck her. No.
But Aussie called that the week before the fight, and all the money was on, all the odds were on Shannon Courtney.
Aussie was brilliant at domestic calls.
He really got that call right. He really did.
He used to get lads like good money on bets and that, like because he was known around the gyms and that, wasn't he? So he knew. I feel like Aussie knew everything about Reese Bellotti. So every time I hear his name, it's in Aussie's accent. Reese Bellotti.
Unfortunately, Aussie went and he got himself a life. Now he probably knows less about Reese Bellotti than he used to.
For fuck's sake!
All right, so look, this is my Aussie moment. Put a 5 on Melinda Watpool to beat Shadeja Green. That's my.
We're all doing that now. I'm doing that as well.
I was just looking up Watpool, and off of who she's fought in her amateur background, I wouldn't.
Okay, let's see. I might not be as good as Aussie at this.
What you have to remember, what Cruz Dezern did is she made that fight really sloppy, where Green wasn't able to get her punches off, and Green's a pretty damn good puncher as far as women go. So I don't know that Watpool brings that same kind of odd frenetic energy and close quarter kind of awkwardness with her.
I'll bow to your judgment on this, Matty. I've got to say, I'll bow to your judgment.
Well, and we're going to bookend this. We're going to talk about a ladies' fight to end the show. I don't want to frighten anybody. I know. But we're going to go to the men's fight first because I think people see this more as a circus act than the one I want to talk about, the one I'm really going to see.
Hey, by the way, I thought this was this fucking week because you were previewing it last week. And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to fucking check the result now this morning. Like, oh, Tyson and fucking Paul is not on next week. Asshole.
No, but well, here we are. Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. Mike Tyson, like 58 years old of him, taking on Jake Paul, I think is 27 at heavyweight. I will say Paul looks really fucking fat at heavyweight. He does not look healthy. He looks pretty fit when he's at cruiserweight. He looks like a real athlete. At heavyweight, not so much. He kind of looks like the guy who works on the oil rigs and has had a few too many nights drinking beer with his friends afterwards. But there still is the interest. Can the old man, in all of his glory, the guy who probably still has one hell of a punch with both hands better than Jake Paul's right hand, is he still deadly for the first few rounds? Guys, we're talking 8 2-minute rounds, 14-ounce gloves. It's a sanctioned fight. I feel like if it goes into the fourth round, Jake Paul's going to win, and he's probably going to stop the old man down the stretch. But if there's an early stoppage in this one, I think Mike Tyson might just get to Jake Paul with a left hand over the top or something like that, a big hook. I don't know. Who do we go to on this one first? Let's go to Danny. Why don't you kick us off on the circus sideshow that is Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson?
Yeah, I think your analysis potentially maybe not that far wrong, Matty, but I have a feeling this isn't even going to really be a real fight. Like, I'm sort of expecting a similar showing as we got when Tyson had that exhibition with Roy Jones Jr. And I know this is being, going on the records as a professional fight, but I cannot see, like, what it is for me is Netflix, or obviously it's been streamed on Netflix. They've bankrolled this. They're obviously a massive corporation, very concerned about their image, their reputation. Are they really going to want attached to them Jake Paul sending a 58-year-old Mike Tyson to the hospital if he knocks him out cold? Like, there will be serious backlash if that happens, I think, which is why there's been rumors of in these Jake Paul fights, there's like contractual agreements that Jake can't be knocked out and this can't happen and that can't happen. I know Tyron Woodley sort of half alluded to it before, and people were suspicious over their first fight, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of skullduggery like that in place here. I'm really not expecting much of a show at all.
I don't know if it's better for you to be correct or for you to be incorrect and leave the possibility of 58-year-old Mike Tyson being like straight knocked out by this young guy who has a pretty damn decent right hand at the end of the day, if he has anything. Des, what are your thoughts on the shit show that I'm going to be seeing live up close and in person?
I'm the wrong person to ask about this sort of stuff because I don't know much about it. Of course, I know I can give you a chapter and verse on Mike Tyson's career, but I don't know anything about the other fella. So, and it's a genuine question. Is this the same kid that had a life and death with Tommy Fury?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Right. So, how does that kid beat Mike Tyson? Now, I know it's an old Mike Tyson. I know it's a dated Mike Tyson. I know he lived a life, but the kid I saw against Tommy Fury, he was awful. It was an awful fight. So there's got to be a fiddle here. There's got to be there's got to be a move. You can't allow Mike Tyson to be let loose on this kid and clip him and iron him out. And nor can you let this kid beat Mike Tyson. No, Matty, I'm going to go with Mike Tyson, of course I am, but I know nothing about this type of thing. I'm really out of my comfort zone talking about it.
Man, and what's crazy is that Ames, I mean, we're talking like 20 years after Danny Williams stopped Mike Tyson, I think. It's insane to be discussing
was the last one. Kevin McBride. It got worse from Danny Williams. Kevin McBride stopped him after that. Fuck's sake.
But it's crazy to be thinking this. I don't know. Are you with Des thinking that there's so much smoke show about Jake Paul that he's there for the taking if this is a real fight against a near 60-year-old Mike Tyson?
It's genuinely hard to kind of fathom what this actually is without it really. You just want to be there on the night like you're gonna be, and just seeing what this is unfold, because I would think that this is a choreographed event where, right, let's get these two big names in. We need to get this Netflix live stuff off and shot with a bang. We need something big because we're Netflix and we're getting into the live event world. We got told earlier that they've done a bit of F1 live. They've done some golf live. I'm not really fussed about either F1 or golf. Couldn't give a monkeys about them. I'm not watching them on a Friday night. By any means,
sports with a pace that's somewhere in the middle of golf and F1.
They're terrible, boring sports. Put them in with cricket as well. Can't stand it. But they need something big, so they've dragged in Jake Paul, who Jake sort of curried a lot of favor with boxing fans because this whole misfit social media scene wasn't very well liked, and Jake was one of the originators of this scene alongside Joe Weller and KSI and a few others. But what Jake had done is he sort of separated himself from that pack and decided to go, look, I don't want to be like those guys. I want to be a professional fighter. Look, my ambitions are lofty and they're deluded and they're crazy, and I'm going to be a world champion and I'm an elite level fighter, and you guys don't see me like that right now, but I will be, and I'll prove it to you. Fine, you got those dreams and aspirations. No, can't be derogatory towards you to
And he
have
has
those
the
things.
means to invest full time in it too. That's
Sure.
the one thing you have to give him. Like, he's not working a regular 9 to 5 and having to be a boxer. He does his social media shit when he wants to, pulls in buku bucks, and he gets to train hard with the best opportunity, best equipment that's available to him.
Absolutely. And people in the boxing world want to be
some of the money team in his fucking corner as well. Doesn't he have? Who's his trainer? Is Ishe Smith or one of these characters his trainer?
I'm not sure who he is actually training. I know he's flirted with a few. Was he not with? He was with BJ Flores. He was with Bob Santos for a bit after he moved on.
I feel like Ishe Smith wasn't Ishe Smith in the corner mouthing at Tyrone Woodley in one of the. I feel like he was one of the money team fighters anyway. I could be mixing up my money team fighters. It wasn't like they had any really fucking breakout stars apart from Javante. Anyway, I digress. Sorry, Ames.
No problem. Yes, so Jake's tried to separate himself from the pack and off of the back of knockout Askren and Tyrone Woodley and whatever, he started trying to fight legitimate boxers, and there were former Golden Gloves champions, but they weren't of any real competition. There was rumors of things and of clauses put in contracts that you can't do this, you can't hurt him here, etc. All this kind of things never substantiated, but these were always around, these fights. But they clearly weren't pulling in the big views, the big bucks, because the Jake Paul train had really kind of slowed down. I think Danny can attest to this too when it comes to our numbers in the boxing reporting world. Jake Paul, starting off with anything you put out on Jake Paul would just get mad numbers, and it just really kind of slowed down. I think they realized, look, this professional thing, if it's going to work, we have to maybe deviate back to what we were doing in the first place to get back some traction, and that's what they've done with going back to the gimmick route and bringing in Mike Tyson. Like I mentioned there, in terms of this being, I can only really fathom this as being something choreographed where they can both look good, and maybe Mike knocks him down in the second round. Whoa, Mike looks great, and he's still got that tiger in him. And Jake's come back now. He's rallied and he's boxed to a points victory, and wow, they both look great. The younger man got the victory, but and whatever. They can all be done with it and make their money. And
kind of like it kind of feels like a real life implementation of Rocky against Mason Dixon.
Something along those lines, basically. But then that's been shot down as well because Jake Paul's manager Nikita Bidarian has said, I've heard all these rumors about what's going to happen in this fight. It's not true. This is a legit fight with the rules that you set out earlier, Matty. And it's also the idea of Netflix is a massive corporation. You don't want to, with one of your first few events, you don't want to con your fans. You don't want to leave the people tuning in have thought, wait a minute, I've wasted my time here. I've been made a bit of a fool of here. Sure, I've probably been highly entertained with Mario Barros is a blood, guts, thunder, and piss fighter. I love watching Mario Barros. And Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano, another great fight. That Buddy is the fella that knocked out Ashton Silva in brutal fashion. He's got an opportunity, and that's I want to highlight this. That's the good that Jake Paul's done in the sport. Like he's really rocketed Amanda Serrano. He's given this Lucas Buddy an opportunity off of the back of that crazy knockout against Ashton Silva. These are all the good things that Jake has done, and I truly believe like Jake has taken a lot out of the sport. This is a guy who I believe was living the LA lifestyle and was probably close to death or something or prison, and used boxing to really kind of focus himself. I completely do believe that. But this big event, like I think they've really got to. This could make or break it because Netflix coming into the scene. If this does huge numbers, as I imagine it would do, like what boxing, what's the next thing? What's the next iteration? Because they're going to go for the next gimmick fight, maybe pad it out with good fights underneath, sure. But Netflix getting into boxing,
Ames,
like
you're
Amazon.
A fellow wrestling fan, and they
I
also,
am, yeah.
Yep, and they now own the rights to WWE. You're going to see a WWE star in some sort of a fight on Netflix, some sort of a boxing match, I think.
There was a rumor that Bobby Lashley was going to do Misfits Boxing. So that might happen. Not an active WWE wrestler. He's in AEW now, isn't he? But that might happen. But yeah, like the idea of Netflix coming into boxing is huge because Netflix, everyone's got Netflix. Everyone doesn't have DAZN. Everyone has Netflix. There are millions and millions of subscribers across the world who has Netflix. And if they get into boxing, that you mainstream boxing again in almost one fell swoop. So it could be like if whoever's organized this thing, whoever's behind this, like if they understand boxing, if they get it right and people really tune in for the boxing element of this, boxing could be in a real good position. But if it's orchestrated in some way, if people feel like they've been mugged off a little bit, then it's going to tune people off, and I do worry a little bit about that. And then you got the side as well too of the two people that are in the ring, and Mike Tyson hasn't been looking the most healthy. He's pulled out on one occasion from this fight because of his health. In that fight with Roy Jones Jr., I thought that Mike was sort of taking it somewhat seriously. Danny, we spoke earlier, and he said, yeah, maybe to the body he was taking it serious, to the head he wasn't so much. But it looked like to me like Tyson can't gimmick himself. Tyson, when he's in the ring, he's him. And it's the other side of it as well too. Is I don't want, like, Tyson's gone through this real like human growth, and I believe that you can see how all the public kind of growth that he's gone and everything that's gone on in his life for bad and for good and for bad. He seems to have turned his life around. He seems to be he's not the Tyson of the past. I wouldn't want to see this be him slipping back into that sort of person again. So I do hope in that sort of sense Mike can separate his ego side, as he said beforehand, from himself right now, because that's important for his health. But on the other side as well too.
Yeah, you're kind of hoping he's not like the Mike Tyson of old, and he's like, shit, I've got all this money now. Let's do cocaine.
Well, that would be terrible. But yeah, like from your point of view, and this is maybe more where I'm well versed in this. If Jake Paul loses to Mike Tyson, like, this guy has been talked about, the real money fight for, and there's a lot of money here for sure, but the big money fight here is the fight against KSI. And if he loses to Mike Tyson, you open the door for KSI to come in, swoop in, and make mega bucks off of Mike Tyson and fight him, and whatever happens there. But you might that fight with KSI goes up in flames as well, I feel, to a large degree, and there's a lot of build back from that. I know hardcore boxing fans don't really care about that sort of scene, but that's just to give you an idea of what's quote unquote on the line here to a degree, I think. But I think this is the biggest event of the year. I think it's going to dwarf everything that's been offered numbers wise from what traditional boxing can offer. And I do hope there's more from Netflix in terms of live boxing and traditional boxing as well. But I'll be watching. I was quite surprised actually to hear that Rob was looking to just like kind of read the pages and see what happened with Jake and Mike. But I'm tuning in. I'll be absolutely a seat on my seat.
It's just
ready to
on
watch the
regular
fight.
Netflix, Rob. It's not going to cost you any more than your subscription if you have a Netflix subscription.
Fucking, you know what age I think I've got to fucking get up at that hour in the morning. Fuck off with you at the
It's
weekend.
Netflix. It'll just be available.
Yeah, but I'm not going to watch it live, is what I'm saying. If I watch it live on Texas time, that's fucking, what's that, fucking 5 a.m. here or something. Those days are gone, man. Do you know that way? Unless the last time I stayed up for a fight, I think was, I could be wrong now. I could contradict myself here on the pod, but I think it might have been Crawford Spence was the last time I specifically stayed up that late, like to watch a fight.
There is
has to be something
there
special
is
to get me at this time.
for me, like there is a thing like I would, if I was in America, I'd be buying a ticket as well too, because for me, who I wasn't a boxing fan when Mike was around. I've never seen him in the ring. I wasn't anywhere near that Roy Jones Jr. exhibition fight, whatever it was. Like, I would love to see any form of Mike Tyson in the ring in the flesh with my own eyes. Like, I'd want to be there.
To see him come to the ring one last time, you know they're going to do a big production. It's Netflix first foray into boxing, Cowboy Stadium. You know, it's going to be a big thing.
I think, can't we just leave fucking things where they are, right? I grew up in the fucking 1980s. I was born in 1978. As I said last week on the pod, I remember a first cousin of my dad's, and if he's out there anywhere, I have lost contact with him over the years, and he'd be some way related to Ryder and all them as well. His name was Michael Owens. He was a first cousin of my dad. He must have a grandson around my age, around 45, Michael Owens as well, in around London, right? He used to come over to Wexford back in the day, and in 85, he was tipping us about this heavyweight kid in America called Mike Tyson. And I remember clearly my dad waking me up on the fucking Sunday morning, come on, we're going to go down and watch this fella. He's going to break Floyd Patterson's record. He's going to be the youngest heavyweight champion of all time. This is the first time I ever seen him. He fucking destroyed Trevor Berbick. He had him like a newborn baby in the ring, manhandled him. And I saw that, like, I remembered, like, that was me falling in love with, like, I'd seen McGuigan, I'd seen Hearns, I'd seen Duran, but that was like the heavyweight champion of the world. Is 20 years of age, and he's a fucking destroyer. And everything that came with him, like I still have the scrapbooks of all his fucking fights collected up in my attic. No joke, like all the clippings of Tyson's whole reign from the first time. So it has Mike Tyson's career.
He was the
Mike
most
Tyson,
recognisable face in the whole world.
without a doubt. He holds a special place in my heart, and especially, like I said, but then ever since then, it's been a complete oversaturation of Tyson. And can we just let him? Can we fucking don't be like, you don't have to fucking, there's so much other fucking facets of boxing that you can get into without dragging Mike Tyson into it at this age. You're fucking 58 years of age. So I get it. I'm with the lads. I think the fix is in here. I'm sorry. Like, I don't care if it's Netflix or not. Like, I don't think there's anything that goes on here that can be believed. I don't think it's a genuine contest. I don't see how you can have a genuine contest with a 58-year-old man who's suffering with illness, who smokes weed and takes fucking mushrooms.
And toad venom.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the good stuff. So, I don't know. Like, I just think it's going to be a move about an exhibition. Everybody's going to get done with the okey doke, and maybe it puts boxing back on a bigger platform. But for me, piece of me's dying thinking about this, thinking about Tyson. It was bad enough seeing it, living through him getting knocked out by Buster Douglas, and then whatever followed afterwards. I just hope he goes a little bit off script. You've seen him on Joe Rogan in recent years when he said that he didn't want to go back to training because when he trains, it brings out the bad part of Mike Tyson and the mean part of Mike Tyson. So, you know, maybe we have one more I'll F you till you love me moment, and he just bites Jake Paul or something, or fucking dislocates his arm, kind of Francois Botha style or something. But, like, it was hard enough to watch Mike Tyson.
He'll get a pardon. Everything will work out for him now. If he does something fucked up, he'll get a pardon now. He's fine.
But as a Tyson fan, like, it was hard enough to watch the back end of his career in real time as it was. Like, you had the Clifford Etienne moments, the Francois Botas, the fucking stop by Danny Williams, the sitting in the fucking corner when Kevin McBride, who wouldn't have even made it as a sparring partner, couldn't have carried his jockstrap in his pride. And, you know, the Holyfield one was tough to take too, because you knew, like, his life was in turmoil, and he was suffering, and it was all coming out in the ring on the biggest stage. The Holyfield one was a very fucking tough one as well, the second one, like, but yeah, like, I don't know. You're not going to get any Rocky moment here. Tyson has showed in his pro career that when shit goes against him, that he looked for a way out. So, like, if he's getting battered by Jake Paul, what does this look like? Maybe he does go rogue. Like, maybe that's where that's worth seeing on Netflix. But hopefully he gets out safe, man. That's what I'd say about that. But Jake Paul is no great shakes. Like I said, like Dave said, when he actually saw him against Tommy Fury, like, would you back Tommy Fury to beat Mike Tyson? Probably not. Like, so
Well,
would you back
that's a
Jake Paul to beat
great
Mike
point.
Tyson?
That's a great point, Rob. Right. So let's run this down the chain a little bit. If you think about, if you said to Michael Sprott or Audley Harrison or Danny Williams or Julius Francis, if you said to Derek Williams, we're going to give you a couple of £1 million and 12 weeks to get in shape, they'd all beat Jake Paul, wouldn't they?
100%.
All them guys, Scott Welch, all them guys would beat Jake Paul if you give them 12 weeks camp and a couple of £1 million. But Mike Tyson was far and away better than all them guys I've just mentioned. And it gets me thinking about how good top pro sports people are. I had a friend that played League 3 football. He had like 50 appearances at Leyton Orient, and he ended up in a charity game with John Jones. John Jones was 62, and he couldn't get near John Jones. He said he was tough, he was spiteful, he knew where he was all the time, he knew how to turn me. He just couldn't get near him. I knew someone that once played tennis with a 60-year-old ex-tennis pro. He couldn't get near him. I've heard stories about people driving a simulating car next to Nigel Mansell. Couldn't live with him. Like, elite sports people are elite for a reason. Now, I know Mike Tyson has lived a life. I know his age is a factor. But Jake Paul's not even a pro. Like, I know he's turned pro, but he's not a pro. He wouldn't win a divisional ABA title. So how are we ever gonna suggest that Jake Paul beats Mike Tyson? Mike Tyson would just be too good for him. So there's got to be a fixing here. This can't be organic.
Do you not worry though, Des, from that point of view, the way, and I know it's different levels of opposition, but the way Evander Holyfield just looked so awful when he was last in the ring?
I'll be honest with you, I never see it, James. And I'll tell you why I never see it. And that's a cop-out, and I heard about it. But he was against another competitive fighter, though, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
An MMA fighter, 15 years is younger, I think.
That's different. So, for example, a sportsman's a sportsman. Like, you know, whether you play rugby at professional level, you play football at professional level, you can put them two in the same hat. They're physical sporting people. They know all about it. So I never saw that one, Ames. I heard it was bad, but he was against a professional fighter. Jake Paul's not that. I mean, I know he's turned over. I know he's got a license, but Jake Paul's awful. And the reason I say he's awful is because we've all been around boxing. And if you put Jake Paul in a top amateur club in London, he don't get entered for the national championships. He's not good enough. So to suggest that he now beats Mike Tyson, and I know Mike Tyson's, is 60 years of age, but it's still Mike Tyson. And I spoke about the levels in sport and how elite sport carries you through your life. If you said to Scott Welch, and I've seen Scott Welch recently, you've got 12 weeks to get in right good shape and there's a few £1 million, it'd take Jake Paul's head off. And that's Scott Welch you're talking about. It was a domestic heavyweight. And Michael Sprott would do the same. And
so just to cut across, Des, I think the difference between like Scott, get to see Scott a little bit, and then Scott looks still very fit and healthy, whereas Mike's pictured with a cane helping him to walk, and that's the difference here. This is a man who's got a lot of wear and tear on him, alongside the way he's lived as well too. He's not outside of these fights. I don't think he's been living in the gym all that much, and that's where I think the argument.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, and so that's a bad comparison because Scott's in good nick, and he looks after himself, and Mike's a little bit more fragile. I get it, but if you just done the balance,
I'll give you Ray Mercer. Get Ray Mercer fit now. He beat the shit out of Jake Paul.
He would take his head off.
Well, it's because he can't knock out Ray Mercer.
It's a great comparison. Give Ray Mercer 12 weeks. Michael Bent. God help us. Can you imagine putting Herbie Hyde in the same ring as Jake Paul? Like any of these guys. But I know the point Ames is making, and it's a fair point. It's a good point. Mike Tyson's a little bit older.
It's a bit ominous when he's pulled out of the fight already once with seizure problems. Like we never got to the bottom of these seizures.
It's a fair point, Ames. I take your point, Ames. I've got a lot of faith in elite sports people though. whether you've been sprinting, playing tennis, whether you're a Formula One racing car driver, whether you're a footballer, rugby player, GAA. If you're pro, if you're an elite level sportsman, you're elite for a reason. You're that 1%. I just can't imagine for 1 minute that if you put Jake Paul anywhere near Mike Tyson, Jake Paul beats him. But Ames does make a very, very concise point.
Just
Mike
goes to show
Tyson
that
he's older and he's more fragile. You're right.
Just goes to show that the ticket price on the nostalgia will always be bought. Matty's going to be there in attendance. I'm going to see Alien Ant Farm this weekend. I woke up early to go get a ticket to see the Biscuit. Like, nostalgia's undefeated.
But
I've got to
just
see Nas on Wednesday night, so I know what you're saying.
But something I'd say there, Matty, right? Rob touched on it earlier, and I'm from the same era as Rob, born the same year. Nothing can compare to Mike Tyson. You had to live it to believe it. And there was no social media. Like, he was the scariest man in the world, the biggest character, the most recognizable face. He was a superstar beyond all comparison. And if you look back on our lives, people like me and Rob would say, well, there's 3 or 4 things that have just made a big impact, whether it's a Star Wars franchise, whether it was McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Mike Tyson you'd put into that. He was such a big name. It was mammoth.
It showed itself days, sorry to cut across you, in 99. It was 99 by the time he got to London. When he got out of jail, he'd had his comeback. He'd lost the Holyfield, and then he made another comeback trail. And this was on the comeback trail. I think he was with Frank Warren, wasn't it? There was Julius Francis in London. There was Lou Savares in Glasgow, and he was going to come for Lennox. And this was they were building him back up for one last time. But we knew the wheels were off. But he stopped traffic in London like the motherfucking Beatles. Did you ever see the footage of him in London in '99?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. I remember
13 years past his fucking sell-by date, like he was stopping traffic in another country. It was incredible, man. Honestly, I said it before. People will never understand unless you live through it. It was insane. Like, he's up there like Madonna, Michael Jackson, Maradona, Mike Tyson. That was the 80s, like global impact.
So in 1999, that visit you're talking about, he ended up in Brixton. I think he was on the Brixton Road.
That's right.
And the gathering was so fierce. For his own safety and for public order, they had to take him into a public building and put him upstairs. And he put his head out the window and started inciting the crowd and talking to them. And it stopped traffic. Like you can't get your head. And this was in 1999. And the big buzz was in 1988, 89. It was 10 years before that. Like, it was the Beatles.
Did he rock down to Electric Avenue?
Yeah, not far.
They did, metaphorically, spiritually, and in a lot of other ways too.
Good knowledge, Matty. Good knowledge, Matty. Good knowledge.
No, I only know that because of you. You mentioned something, then I ended up learning about the Brixton riots, and I'm like, oh, it's good to know other countries have done fucked up racist shit.
Yeah. Electric Avenue is a real road. It's a street off Brixton Road, and who was it? Is it Eddie Grant? Who was it that sang the song? Yeah, but
Eddie Grant.
Yeah. So that's where Mike Tyson was. And NWA have been there. Everybody's been down there. No one stopped traffic. Mike Tyson ended up in Brixton and he stopped traffic. The place come to a standstill. 10 years after his pomp.
To tell you, I mean, I can't believe that we've talked about this fight this long. It just goes to show you, like, the shadow of Mike Tyson is long. You know, but that's not why I'm going. And I'm glad to see everybody think that's interesting. Everybody thinks Mike, he's a fucking boxer. He's going to knock this guy's head off, even 58 years old. But that's not the reason.
Mate, before you move on, though,
okay,
we threw this in our conversation earlier on the Twitter. When Jake and Tommy fought each other, a certain organization, I haven't heard anything, but a certain organization wanted to rank the fighters in the winner in the rankings.
Cruiserweight. Yeah, top 25 was it?
And Jake Paul was going to be the top 25. Tommy Fury ended up winning. I think he got ranked. I believe he was ranked 38 in the top 40.
And has Tommy Fury fought since then, Ames?
He fought KSI, didn't he? I think that was after, but not back in the professional ranks in the traditional sense. What's the likelihood before this fight week ends?
KSI, he should have lost that one.
No, I think Tommy won that one, but What's the likelihood that an organization comes in and ranks one of these fighters, and the possibility of Mike Tyson being ranked after this fight?
No, I think they'll draw the line because it's 8-2's 14-ounce gloves. I think the 14-ounce gloves are going to keep them out of it.
Let's hope so.
Let's hope this spawns the fight that we all want to see between Mike Tyson and Big John Fury.
He's been calling for it, hasn't he? He's wanted it for
He's been
years.
asking for it, hasn't he? So this is where it is. I just want to draw attention as well before we have to fucking move on from this fucking spectacle.
Do we?
But we did get one last great Mike Tyson quotable in the build up to it. It wasn't quite "I'll F you till you love me" F word, and it wasn't quite fucking spinal, and it wasn't quite unfade to Bolivian. But he did say, Jake Paul did say, "I want to kiss Mike on his big juicy lips," and Mike was like, "What?" It's funny that he said he wanted to kiss me because when I saw that video of him as a little kid, I got an erection. And everyone was like, "Oh."
That's not right. That's not right at all.
The right moment to leave this where it is.
Wow. That's kind of like playing a fucked up song on the jukebox and then walking out of the bar and leaving everybody else to deal with it. Anyhow, that's that is the main event. But why am I going there? Well, I want to see a rematch of the greatest women's boxing match of all time. Yeah, I'm talking about Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano II.
I thought you were going to say you want to see an erection.
If I see an erection in this fight, Rob, it'll bring back up more questions than I've ever wanted to have. But anyhow,
he's just got through the general erection. That was terrible.
Yes, it was. But anyhow.
A lot of people in pain.
Is there any recovering from this? We'll find out. We're looking forward to this match. Usually people aren't looking forward to women's boxing matches, but this is one that I think that people can get behind. The atmosphere was electric at Madison Square Garden. I don't know that it'll be the same in Dallas. The Puerto Rican population a little thin on the ground there. Not saying there aren't any Puerto Ricans there. Will the Irish people make the trek? I don't know. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be good. It doesn't mean these aren't two women who the first time around didn't embrace the gravity of the situation. So I think it's highly possible that we see a repeat of the first one. Maybe not as intense. Maybe it will not be as close on the cards. Maybe it'll go the other way, but I do think that this is going to be another great representation of women's boxing coming up on Friday from Dallas, Texas. What are your thoughts on this one, Danny? I've never talked women's boxing with you. Is this one that that you're looking forward to?
Put yourself lucky on that one, Danny.
I'm not normally like a biggest fan of like the sort of week in, week out women's boxing you've seen, but obviously as an Irishman you gotta tune in when Katie turns out. I'm looking forward to it. Obviously the first fight was unreal, really close fight, and it pains me to say it, I fancy Serrano to scrape by in this one. I think it'll be another really close fight, but I get the feeling she's maybe slightly fresher than Katie Taylor is at this stage of her career, and you just think though on like a Jake Paul show, I know they were very aggrieved to not get the decision in the first fight. If it's close, in America and in Texas, I would fancy Serrano to get it, but anticipate another really good fight to watch, definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting you're saying Serrano takes this one. It, at a higher weight, Serrano did grab a title earlier in her career at 140 pounds when she was just kind of scooping them up from vulnerable champions throughout the divisions. This is going to be at a catch weight of 137 pounds. Des, what direction are you going on this one? Are you getting up for this fight?
No, I really enjoyed the first one. One of the best women's boxing matches I've ever seen. I'm a big fan of both. I like Katie Taylor, everything she's done. I can go back with Katie all the way back to the amateurs when she was pulling up trees and kicking open doors. I think she's been brilliant. We say a lot about women's boxing, and truth be told, I don't really get into women's boxing, but I get into the good ones. And Katie Taylor's a good one. She's a fantastic ambassador for Ireland and for the sport. But I'm similar to Danny. I think she's been too inactive. I think she struggled the last 24 months. She had the Cameron. Chantel Cameron defeat. I think she's not been active enough this year. She hasn't boxed since last November. I think Serrano's been very busy. She boxed back in July this year. It's on a Jake Paul show. Everything points. Look, they're both even. They're both at it. They're both really good women fighters. I think the edge is with Serrano because she's been more active, more busy, and she's on a Jake Paul show. I think she'll just nick it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Katie gets it. But my hunch is, with a backdrop of everything Amanda's done the last 2 years against what Katie's done, I think Amanda goes in with a slight edge.
All right, yeah, and Amanda's paying about what would it be, about 6-5. Billam Smith about 2-1. You can get a double that's about 11-2 on them. Interestingly enough, the way that you guys are hunching on that one. Let's see here. I'm gonna go to Ames next on this one, and I'm gonna let Rob wrap it up. And I think it does speak volumes that we spend so much time talking about Mike Tyson, although we're into this fight, not as much. But nonetheless, I'm looking forward to this one, Ames. This is the main reason I'm going down there. I got screwed out of seeing a Serrano fight in Puerto Rico, and hopefully my presence doesn't ruin this fight and keep it from happening in Dallas.
It will.
Okay. Damn it.
No, look.
Well, why even make a prediction? It's not gonna.
No, it'll be. It's gonna be another great fight. The first fight was a brilliant big event. The word's been used here before. You've come around to me. These are two ambassadors of the sport here, of their regions, of what boxing should be about in general as well. And like I mentioned here, from a Jake Paul point of view, he's really helped to uplift Amanda Serrano to the highest levels of the sport in terms of profile and getting pay that the highest levels deserve. I think I'm of the other point of view. I believe that I think Katie Taylor's still got enough left in the locker, especially with this being super lightweight as well. You're talking about an Amanda Serrano who's pint size at the lower weights, coming up to a heavier weight, which suits Katie better, and to contest with someone who, look, Katie, there's been a lot of talk about Katie slipping and Katie being over the hill, and I think she is that, but she's still operating at a really high level. She's still operating at a level where she's beating Chantel Cameron. Like, I think a lot of it, I think that second fight was part of it, and a factor of it was Chantel Cameron somewhat beat herself as well too, and she abandoned some of the tactics, and I think maybe she probably was thought she was going to go into that fight and just kind of run through Katie Taylor. And I know that she's really wants that third fight again. Whether she gets that is another thing, but this is still a fighter who's operating at a real high level, and I think she'll have enough for Amanda Serrano. What might be an issue is how the scorecards reflect here, and if it's a close fight, might that little home advantage give Serrano that rub of the green on the scorecards and then set up the trilogy. I'd fancy, all things being equal, Katie Taylor still to get the points decision victory. I think maybe by unanimous decision, and albeit still a pretty close fight, 116-112 type of thing. But yeah, I think Katie Taylor's
116-112. It's a 10-round fight. You think it's going to be 96-94?
My apologies, 96-94. Yeah, getting ahead of myself. Hopefully we get to see Katie Taylor do 12 rounds in 3 minutes before she hangs up the gloves as well too. I know obviously a lot of women have been campaigning for that, and Serrano had been campaigning for that as well.
She's done it, you know.
She has done it. Actually, you just jogged a little memory of mine, even though it was only from a week ago. But yeah, I need to jog in for that. Chantel Cameron said to me that if this was over 12 threes, completely different fight, and she'd fancy Amanda Serrano to really hurt Katie Taylor, maybe even potentially like stop her here, but it's not that. And we're talking about a fighter just like Clarissa Shields at the highest level. She knows how to navigate those 2-minute rounds to a T, when to go, when to burst, and then when to fall back and then nick it maybe at the end of the round as well. That experience is what's going to see her through here in this fight, alongside still being a really high level fighter. So I'm going Katie Taylor on points. 116-112, even though it's 10 rounds.
And unfortunately, Rob stepped away right now. so I'm going to have to fill
Have
this
you ever
with some
seen Rob
perspective.
Kelly and Katie Taylor in the same room?
I have serious questions. But so Miami Virtue asked, was Taylor Serrano one of the top 10 fights of the century so far? I'm a huge boxing fan. I'm going to say no, and I bet I can name 10 fights that I think were better just off the top of my head. As far as this century, I mean, you got Gotti Ward 1, Pacquiao Marquez 4. One of my favorites is Freitas versus Barrios. Diaz versus Marquez 1. Morales or Morales versus Barrera. I mean, I think I'm at 6 right there, just off the top of my head. And I mean, obviously more Wilder versus Fury 3. So it's up there, but I don't think it quite was it. But I think it's the best women's fight of the century at this point in time. But I mean, and that speaks for enough for itself. Would I think it's in the top 20 fights of the century so far, regardless of gender? I actually think maybe that's a worthy argument to make on that one. I don't know, Ames. Do you think that might that argument might hold water more than top 10?
Yeah, top 20, top 30. I think you hold a better argument for it. I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head, mate.
Damn it! And Rob, are you back from talking yet? Oh, perfect time to walk away, Rob. I don't want to close out without his without the take of the long-standing Irish panelist here. No offense to you, Danny.
Who, Danny?
No, Danny's gonna have to work to overtake Rob's spot as the number one Irishman on the panel. That's a hard fought victory. It's not like Irish people get into battles though, ever, is it? That doesn't happen anyhow. Let's see. This fight, if it was over 10 rounds, if it was over 12 rounds, I obviously think that Serrano would have an advantage. But I still think that given she has been fighting and training for the 12-round distance, I think that does give her a potential stamina edge. And if there's anything that I would say, that I would say, Danny, when it came to, or let's go to you, Des. If there's anything I could say, Des, when it came to Katie Taylor, even when she got the W over Chantel Cameron, I thought Cameron looked better down the stretch than Katie Taylor, and I would expect that even if she has an advantage on the scorecard through 7 or 8 rounds, Serrano's probably going to be the one coming on hot the last 2.
Yeah, there's a degree of wear and tear on Katie. She's had a very hard career, and she was boxing at the very elite level, even the amateurs. I'm going back sort of, maybe Rob and Danny might be a bit sharper than me on this, but I think I'm going back to sort of 2008, 2009, and she was fantastic in an elite amateur tournament. So she's had a very hard career. I'm expecting her to dip a little bit now. She's been showing signs of decline, if that's the right word, for a few years. I thought Cameron was stronger down the stretch. I agree with that observation of yours, Matty. I just think that this is a close one. Taylor's always going to be an elite fighter. It's 2 very good kids. I just think Serrano's been more active. She's been busier. She boxed in July. She's on a Jake Paul show. The first one, there wasn't a lot in it. I just fancy Serrano's going to edge it. But I won't be surprised if we're any other way. But my opinion is it's a Serrano just nicking it. And the point you made is a fair one. We might see Taylor struggle in the last four rounds.
All right. Yeah, it's going to be fun down the stretch. Rob, do you think that that Katie has one more in her on this side of the pond?
Without a doubt, Maddie. Looking forward to this fight against Amanda. Working me training camp, going to Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas, Maddie, as you know. So my performance is going to be bigger. The fight's going to be better. We're going to take Amanda's head off. Not going to leave with that guap, baby. Netflix money. Generational wealth, Maddie. No, look, Katie Taylor is a saint of Ireland. She is a fucking saint. There hasn't been, you could hear crickets more than you'd hear about this fight on this side of the pond. It has really gone under the radar. Listen, Katie Taylor, like, what can you say about her? Like, it's fucking, as Dave pointed out earlier, like, she's She changed the face of women's boxing. You wouldn't have your chicks with Dig Pod Maddie if it wasn't for Katie Taylor. She, alongside of fucking Clarissa Shields, put women's boxing on the global map, like with their performances in the amateurs. And Katie famously boxed in front of that amateur commission to boxing exhibition to have them have, because she'd won so many world titles, she wanted to have an Olympic title, and she rallied and campaigned for that, and she actually got a amateur bout held behind closed doors for the adjudicators and the Olympic panel for them to make women's boxing an Olympic sport, which ultimately led to a lot of these girls going pro and getting paid money in the pro ranks. One of the great stories about Katie Taylor for me is the night that she opened up for John O'Carroll in Boston, and Jono got paid the money. I think he was fighting Tevin Farmer on that card. Half the fucking crowd, 90% of the crowd was in to see Katie Taylor, Irish Americans. And she went to Eddie Hearn famously the next morning and asked him how much John O'Carroll got paid for that fight. And then said, well, look what the fuck I got paid. So she came for the money. A lot of people question why she went on so long. Heard like Billy Welch talk different times, the US Olympic coach now, who's from Wexford, who would have been the Irish elite coach for many years, and would have worked alongside Katie, alongside her dad at that time when he was her amateur coach. And he questioned the motives for her carrying on and suggested that there was people making too much money out of her, and that's why she was still being rolled out. I mean, she ultimately probably hit her sell-by date maybe 3 to 4 years ago, and she's fighting on because she's that good and she can. The competition levels are not that deep. Having said that, her and Serrano was a fight for the ages. I do think Serrano hurt her towards the late stages of the fight. I think
Well, in the middle,
it's hit
too,
her.
the 4th or the 5th round.
Yeah, she buckled her at one stage, I remember, but I think Katie ultimately, I think she did enough to win that fight. And I think she was the rightful winner. But there was a little bit of a controversial element from the US fans and the Puerto Rican fans who obviously thought Serrano had won it. With that said, if this is a tight fight this time, I think Katie's had to overcome massive obstacle to beat Chantel Cameron in the rematch. I think that fight nearly killed her, actually, although she was near perfect. But she had the amount of time she had to bite down on that fight and have the last say. And I think it really took it out of her. And there's only so many fucking training camps. Like Katie Taylor played soccer for Ireland as well, underage, up until it became too much that she was, or she played for the, I think she played for the senior women's football as well for Ireland. Like she's been training and fighting her whole life. She's had camps for her whole life. And I think sometimes you can just get old overnight. So I'd say Serrano, if it's a tight decision, I think Serrano's going to get it. Like house fighter, a lot of bandwidth in terms of the political landscape and stuff like that. But take all that shit out of it. I think Serrano probably would be the fresher fighter on the night, and if it's tight, she'll get the decision. But Katie Taylor will know. If I know the Katie Taylor that she is, when you think about her being conscious about the money and that, I think she'll go for the trilogy back home as her final fight if she loses to Serrano.
Yeah, I think that is highly possible that it ends up that direction. But this, you'd say they're not getting huge press over there for this fight. You kind of wonder if this in itself isn't a cash out if she can't get something big in Ireland. That obviously the trilogy against Chantel Cameron is huge. Do you think that there might be any odd interest in her to seek another title at 147 against Mayer?
Is that for me?
Sure.
No, I think she has to quit sometime, dude. And I think obviously Mayers have maybe high risk, low reward for her. It's up the weight. She's a very good fighter, and I don't think she's a draw decided upon. I think the Serrano fight sells here. She would have fought her twice in the States at this stage, and I think one final fight with Serrano will be the last fight. So I wouldn't be surprised if she does lose the decision next week and wrap it up over here with a homecoming. Like I think if she loses, it's not going to be end for her in Texas. She'll want one more fight at home. Like.
Yeah, farewell. I could see how that happens. It's all you wonder if she'd want to risk it with the trilogy with either of them if she has an L against at that point against both of them. But we'll see.
I don't think she'll fight Cameron again. I think it'll be Serrano again. Like I don't think it'll be Cameron.
Yeah, Cameron looks like she's kind of fighting pissed a little bit. I think she's going to be coming out swinging for the fences if she gets that one again. Because I think she feels like she lost that last fight, and I think she felt like that maybe Taylor got away with a little bit more holding than should be permitted as well. So But anyhow, we shall see as far as that goes. But it's I'm looking forward to that one. I'm going to be in Dallas, but it's a quick 1-day trip. I will be back here. And we will be doing a podcast next week to cover this and look ahead to some fights that might be a couple of weeks away. I was kind of looking at the schedule, but yeah, we'll kind of see what happens. But it's been a great show. I'd like to thank Justin for coming on earlier, as well as Dez, Ames, Danny, and Rob. Thank you for stopping in. And Danny, where can people find your work?
Just Pro Boxing Fans, YouTube, mate. Just run them views up. Cheers.
Bam. And yeah, please give them a subscribe there. And you can go to Seconds Out and check out Eamon Khan's work there. Ames,
Nah. Don't do that.
Work. Danny don't do work.
Nobody.
Danny gets worked in sparring.
That's it, mate.
Yeah, what's funny, Rob, you never thought you might see the day that this would happen, but you could be the hardest working person on this podcast.
I don't fucking bet on it. By the way, I don't know. Abe shouldn't be telling sparring stories because I heard a fucking 8-year-old worked him over in McCracken's.
Yep, I confirm that kid is going to be something else. I tell you. It takes something great. It takes something great to beat me, and he's on the path to greatness.
He was great at 8.
He's the best one-legged fighter I've ever seen.
Packs a punch. I'll tell you that.
So anyhow, I'd like to thank everyone for being on here, and we will see you next week to review all this stuff. Hopefully, we have some interesting things to talk about. Maybe I'll have an interesting story or two from the fight. I do think the undercard's got some good stuff on there, and also the Saturday, as far as that DAZN card from Saudi Arabia goes, I think you got a few real quality fights on that one. So we'll have some good stuff to talk about next week. Thanks again for everybody for stopping on here. I've been your host, Matt DiGelinardo, and we will see you folks next Sunday.